what makes like our life fun, and like what do we do, and what makes it fulfilling. And it's fulfilling for you to be able to share with people experience that you have. Some people might just experience it vicariously through watching it on your video, and you might hit that one person that gets up from that film afterwards and is like, oh my gosh, says to his buddy, let's do this, and then all of a sudden they're on this incredible adventure that they would not have done.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today is a special episode featuring none other than my mom. For those of you who have seen the recent surprise video I made on YouTube, you know some of her story and her involvement in wildfly. But if you haven't, you're about to learn all about it. My mom was the first one to introduce me to fly fishing, and she's been my #1 supporter of wildfly since day one. Just last year, she left her job to come work for me full time to handle our merch fulfillment operations. So anytime one of you orders a piece of gear from us, she is the one handling it. In this episode, we talk all about what it's been like for her to step into that position, especially with me living in Utah now. We also dive into our family lineage in fly fishing, her upbringing in the outdoors, and what the early days of wildfly looked like. I've always wanted to have a conversation like this with her, and I'm excited to share it with all of you. But before we get into it, I wanted to let you know that we are running a sale on select items on our website. You can get up to 50% off certain gear from now until December 9th. And if you want to get free shipping at checkout, this is an exclusive for all of you podcast listeners. Just use the code WILDFLYPODCAST and you got free shipping. How about that? And lastly, our deadline to order to receive your gear by Christmas is December 18th. So if you guys want to get your gear before Christmas, make sure you order before the 18th. All right, let's get into it. I think we should get this going. Okay. I thought it would be a fun way to, very fitting wearing this OG Wildfly sweatshirt, the first ever sweatshirt and first ever logo that I ever got done. It's kind of old school, but I don't know, kind of a little nostalgia. But yeah, I've wanted to do a podcast and conversation like this for a while with you, especially highlighting some of the stuff that you do for wildfly, for me, just to make all of this possible. So give us a little idea of where we're at right now. Where are we sitting?
Well, we are sitting basically right now in the area where I do most of the fulfillment. So we're packaging, getting everything ready to get shipped out in this area. And then also behind, we've got some of the product. We've got some in another room as well. And then on the other side over there is basically the office where we're doing the orders and just doing a lot with like customer service. And if you have, issues, problems we got to handle, different sizes, things like that come back. But yeah, I spend a lot of time in this room, and I think what's exciting about it is it's super fun that I'm on this end of it, getting everything packaged, knowing that at the other end, everybody's exciting for them to receive their gear. So that's kind of fun. Makes it fun.
And we're in a warehouse, or where are we?
Yeah, we're like in a mini warehouse. We are in what was formerly our dining room in the house. So we've kind of taken over the dining room, and then now you'll see that we've actually taken over one more office space in downstairs. But makes it kind of fun. We can have the dogs around, and I can kind of slide back and forth in the two offices. But it works great. It's been good.
Yeah, thanks for letting me use the house and not have to go pay for a warehouse or a storage unit yet. That's definitely been helpful.
Yeah, Scotty leaves and then he actually moves in a different room, He leaves his bedroom, but then, moves in down here. But I'm so glad it's been able to work here. It's been good.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it's kind of expanding throughout the house. And so I think we are going to need to get a space at some point in the next, year or two.
True.
Which is great.
It's a good problem to have, I think.
Yeah. But I'd love for you to kind of lay out what you do for wildfly and like what your day-to-day looks like. Because you're very much behind the scenes. People for the most part are following for the YouTube videos and they watch the channel and the films. but they don't. And then people who do maybe order merch and help support that way, or just want to get a hat or something, they don't quite see what goes on behind the scenes. So they might not be familiar with who you are or what you do.
Okay. Well, this year was fun. Took over last summer, basically doing the operations here in the, so to speak, warehouse. And a lot of it is the communication just between all the different pieces that go on, whether it's, working with you on something, or even some of the people that are putting together our products that we're, just tying loose ends there, and communicating a lot via email with customers, or, a lot of the followers and subscribers that may have questions, things like that. So I do a lot with the communication. And then a lot of it does end up being fulfillment. I need to make sure that we've got, all the boxes and tape and everything else that we need ordered. So we have that here, especially during holidays, things like that. And then actually picking the product and getting it so it's nicely displayed and ready to go in the boxes, and then getting that packaged and shipped off, and setting up our post office pickups, and when that doesn't happen, dragging all the boxes to the post office and doing that. And
wholesalers. I mean, there's a lot. You're doing a lot.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then some of the other parts of it is we've been working with wholesalers. So we've got a couple stores that we're in right now. So, working on them getting their orders done. And then I'll get that all packaged up and shipped off to them, and just a lot of follow up, because that's been a good thing. They've been excited. There's a bunch of the stores that have our videos going on in the background, so that's really fun. So now that they have the product in the store, it makes it kind of fun for the people that are watching, and I think it adds a little bit to them for their store, and it's been exciting for that.
Yeah, taking all the, would you say, the tasks that I don't want to do or isn't maybe as important for me to be doing off my sleeve has been really important, or really helpful.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about that as a good explanation is probably like, I remember, we used to go into your room when you were like in high school or something. Maybe you'd open the door and go, oh, okay, I can see just by the floor that he ran today, and then he went fishing, and then, oh yeah, that's right, just by, the piles that are on the floor. And I was like, oh, I can tell exactly what he did all day. But I think, like you said, it's great. That's great to do. Something that I feel like I'm really good at is maybe organization, and definitely a planner. And so if that's not something that's your strength, it's been really fun for me to be able to say, wow, he can just focus on what you're so good at. And that is, the creativity, whether it was the creative piles on the floor or, no. But that's what's fun for me to be able to step in and do that. And I think moving forward, doing a little bit more of that, you're on so many trips with so many flights and just a lot of logistics. And so that'll be fun to, moving forward, be able to take over some of those things that will help just kind of ease your plate a little bit. And it's stuff that I enjoy. I enjoy doing that.
I don't know where I missed maybe I got dad's unorganized genes, and I totally missed the planning genes on your end. But that's definitely, it's definitely something I'm trying to work on, like we've been talking about. But so I guess the reason that I am back here is I have a shoot coming up in a couple days with Due South Outfitters, some of my friends. We're doing a cool film on the Parkway, but so you thought I was coming back on like the 11th, and I decided to plan this little surprise trip as a way to kind of thank you for all the stuff that you've done so far with Wildfly, and all this we have set up here. And we got to go down to South Carolina, to the coast, to the low country, and do some redfishing, which is one of my favorite things. Some in fly fishing, just favorite things to do ever. And so I really had a blast being able to take you kind of into my world, show you some of the redfishing that I've been telling you about and showing you on these films, but you haven't really been able to experience it. So what were your thoughts, going into that and like the whole experience of redfishing?
Well, I guess, can I back up a little bit in the whole experience of the surprise?
Yeah. I know I kind of skipped some steps, but go for it.
That's right. That was crazy. And again, the planner side of me was like, oh, okay, I know exactly when he's coming and all that. So we're sitting on the porch at my brother's house and just hanging out there, and up walks Scotty. I was like, wait, what? And I was absolutely shocked because it was days before we were supposed to do it. So I think after that shock set in and you gave me the card and everything that said that we were going to go on this trip, I was just so excited for the experience of that because I've watched a couple of the films that have had redfishing and then also like Sailboat Diaries, but then also I've literally been here when you've come back from like your last trip. I think you came to Charlotte and you went and you came back and you're like, I'm moving there. And I couldn't believe it because I'm going, there's no way. He's like a mountain kid, on the streams. But then now having me experienced it again is hard for me now, like even to say it to somebody else what the difference is. But can I go into that?
Like, yeah, a little of course.
Bit? So I had seen it and I'd seen your excitement. I was like, okay, just the whole, how nervous you get with when you catch the fish and all, but being able to be down there and actually experience it firsthand, where the biggest thing, coming from a background. So my background is college basketball coaching, and coming from the background of coaching, it was incredible to see the teamwork. I would say first off, that's what amazed me the most. Because when you're on a stream, that's what I grew up fishing, mostly dry fly, and you're there and you're kind of seeing the area and you're casting and looking and waiting and, picking it up and casting again. And this was so different because it was like all the little parts had to come together. You had the one person making sure, like Rob as the guide is like setting you up where the boat needed to go once you're, in the water and then you're looking. But then once you found the fish, it's that whole hunt was completely different. That's what my heart would just start racing, even just seeing the fish tail. And so the first couple, I saw it and I got all excited, but didn't quite know how to, just get the actual cast and everything down because it was a lot heavier of a rod and obviously a much bigger fly. But then once I kind of got that and he did some great like breakdown steps of, this is like the big picture, and then I'm going to break it down in steps, and this is how you do it. And so once I got some of those steps in there, and I kind of was able to get the rod going, and then when I actually got into that first fish, and you're like, strip, and I did that, like my legs got so weak, and I was so excited. I almost wanted to hand the rod over, but I was up on this platform, and I was like, okay, stay on the platform, and just keep going. But it was such a rush, and it was so different than hooking a fish like on a stream, because you actually see it, and then it makes you even more so have that, I want to get it and I've got to get it. It's my one chance. And so that first one was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible experience. The whole thing from, it's just so new to someone who's coming from a trout world, and then to be able to step into that and you're hunting down these fish, you see it, you get your one shot, a couple of shots at it, and then to actually get it to eat, it's just the most rewarding experience. And so I'm really glad that we got to do that. And Rob was great. He was a great teacher and helped us out. So if any of you guys ever looking to go redfish in the South Carolina coast, definitely hit our boy Rob Alexander. He's the man.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that was so great that Rob did was, like I said, he gave you the big picture, because we start out, it's dark, and he puts the boat in, and I really didn't know what to expect. I knew like how to cast and how to basically fish, but I didn't really know all the steps. But you come in, and it's completely dark, and then you just get in the boat and you just fly. You're just speeding and flying to this one area where he knows exactly where it is. And, the sun hasn't even, risen. And then there's so much just like kind of set up for it all. Getting in the right spot, getting to the spot where he, knew he would have to be at that time of day. Because so much of it is based on, the time and then the tide and all that. So even prior to getting there was so much that he knew, and his knowledge, that he was able to get us in the right spot. And then for me to learn even like that whole day just about, the tides and how different it is in that area, that they're so big. And I think it was like, what, 8 foot tides?
Yeah, 8.5 foot. Here, let me grab the dogs really quick.
Yeah.
Does that jingle go in the back? Yeah, so you're saying with going out there with Rob?
Oh yeah, it's just there was obviously so much planning on his part, like prior to getting there, which, made it such a good experience again. But also I think just when we got there and we actually got to the spot to kind of sort of like maybe practice, I guess, the casting and all that, that he broke it down so it was manageable. He knew that I had fly fished before, but obviously this is different. But again, he did it in such a simple way, was, first this, then this, and even like when we were like sighting it, he would use like the clock, which was so, perfect. Like, hey, it's at 2:00, and you're going to lead the fish. Just those short little simple things that he would communicate. And then, again, like the whole teamwork of it, he would communicate in words, and then I had to actually kind of do the performing of it and get that to be in sync to get the fish was great.
Yeah, and your red fishing experience is very different from my getting into red fishing experience. I mean, we barely rolled up to the flat and there were fish tailing. Talk about that, like getting thrown right into it and then eventually leading to a fish.
Yeah, it was crazy because from Scotty's experiences talking and then also just watching the films, it seemed a little bit like it would be a much longer time that I'd get all the time to, so to speak, I guess, practice the casting and things like that. But this wasn't that long. This was the 4th fish. So there were 4 fish pretty much, probably, I don't know, maybe within like a 45 minutes or half hour.
Yeah.
Right off the bat that were there. And to learn to see like that many of them tailing right away. So then I kind of knew, okay, when it goes this way, you're going to lead it a little bit more. So I didn't really know any different that it would be that this was quick, but it kind of got you, without a pun intended, but it got you hooked, because once you got one, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I got this. Like,
yeah,
I feel like I can do this now, and and
it was brand new gear. I mean, you're used to a 4 or 5 weight rod, and you're fishing an 8 weight for the first time.
Yeah, it's funny because then when we look back at it that first night, when we went back and looked at the video, I felt like, wow, I was in this lightweight, just kind of doing a little, 25 casts with a, dry fly. And of course that wore your hand down, but you learned that you don't need as many. It was like once you sight it and the communication is there, that just do like just a couple
false casts.
And I feel like I was doing it really light, and I learned a lot later that I had to do the real hard, and that helped a ton, I think, to get rid of maybe some of the slack that was there.
Yeah,
so that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, you come from a trout world where, and I did the same thing, where you're trying to present this fly really elegantly and not spook the fish, Yeah, and you still want to present it and not spook the fish. You don't want to land it on the fish, as we found out.
Yeah,
but at the same time, you can. The fish is looking down for the most part. They're looking for the crabs in the grass. So like you can make a pretty, hefty cast, like more speed and more power. And then if you just lead them and land it a little bit like that. And sometimes, I mean, the fish I caught landed it on its nose and he just ate it. So they were just happy fish.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it.
I think the whole teamwork thing that I was saying was so amazing is, I've actually only done one float trip, which that one we did up in Boone, and I've only done one of those. Otherwise, it's all been waiting. So I'm at the front of the boat on a platform, which, right off the bat, at 6 a.m, okay, get up on the platform, which is like, 2 feet above the boat, and you got a marsh all around you. That was different. And then we've got Rob guiding from the back, and he's up even like higher than I am. So like that whole teamwork of him being able to sight from way above, I'm up high, can see, and then you were like in the middle of the boat, basically with all the camera gear, but also like still being able to, see the directions. So that's what I meant. Like that whole teamwork thing was amazing, because, if he didn't sight it from up there to kind of give me the direction of where it was, and then understanding literally when that tail comes up, just how then you can see the direction of where the fish is going. And I think you called it something with the waters. It was like
nervous water.
Oh yeah, nervous water. So we would see like the little nervous water at first. So that gave you a little maybe second advance that you might see the tail, and then actually saw the tail. And I think that's what helped me the second day, is that we had seen so many right away to get it kind of back to back. So you get a visual of like, okay, I've got this, and they're going this direction. And, now I know that I can, once I felt more like where I could actually place the fly, that helped out a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a little more confident with the cast and where to place it.
Yeah.
I definitely struggled with that, though, even the second day specifically. Just, I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't get it in the right spot. And these fish were really happy. And that's why Rob was saying, hey, dude, you can land it close to him. Like, land it on him, just about. And I kept just landing it too far away or behind him or too short.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know. I ended up hooking a couple, but.
Yeah, but do you think part of that was because you just don't know when you're going to see the next fish? I guess that was me. Like, I don't know when I'm going to see the next fish. So you're like,
yeah,
okay, I gotta do this right. I gotta,
Yeah, you have to take advantage of this shot. You know?
I think that's kind of like that whole teamwork thing too that we were talking about. It's weird because it was me. I was the only one that was fishing, let's say, for example, and there's 2 other people that were helping out, but the pure like enjoyment when I caught the fish was like everybody in the boat's enjoyment. Like everybody had, so much a part of it.
Yeah.
Like you got him cheering from behind and then, you're in the middle and then I was fishing, but like same thing when you were fishing. Like our enjoyment was I don't know. It's like that huge teamwork. That's why I think I can't imagine not doing that. Like it's my first time and not doing it with a guide. Like I don't know that I would be excited to go back because you probably would see maybe 2 fish, and I don't know that you'd actually. I don't know how many you'd actually really hook, but I think that was the part that made it so good. Just the small little tiny things that he gave that were so just clear and concise. Like a little further ahead or mine. I think my biggest thing was the line. Right, like I would get it out there, but I wouldn't. My first kind of strip wouldn't really have my line as taut as I needed, and then I actually was just getting it on the streams or hooking the fish. I was having problems like on stream fishing, and I was just getting that flip the rod up hook thing, and now it's like everything's rod down.
Yeah, strip set.
So I had to like completely reverse that and keep the rod down the whole time, and then it was literally just that huge strip, which was crazy, like especially on my second fish.
Yeah,
because it was so close and I never even felt it.
Yeah,
until it took off and Rob saw it eat the fly, and I never even saw that. So
yeah, you did great. I mean, you strip set them, you hooked them,
but it was so delayed because I strip set it and didn't know that I actually hooked it. He saw it eat, and then I think it took off towards the front of the boat. I think kind of.
Yeah,
and then that's when I actually felt it taking off, and then that's when all of a sudden you just, gosh, you get it's so exciting.
What did it feel like when you finally got that fish to the boat and into hand in that first one? Just like landing it.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to hold it, that's for sure. It's so slimy and really scaly. It's so different than a trout. But yeah, getting it in there, I think all of a sudden I realized that my biggest fear was now that I hooked it, like keeping it on. Because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I can keep it on and get it all the way into the boat. But then it was like such a relief when he brought it into the boat,
Oh yeah.
And then a shock, like, here, you hold it. I was kind of like, I got to do this. It's all part of it. And then I
you did great.
Did it. And it was, oh my gosh. It was exciting. And the picture was 1,000 words. Like, I was so excited.
Would you go again?
Absolutely. And I know when we were driving away, it was funny. We were driving back and you said those 2 fish, like those 2 fish that got away, when the flies, when they bit in the fly and that got off. And then you said, oh yeah, 3 years ago. And you talked about this one fish that you can actually remember. And I didn't really get it, but then now experience it. We're driving back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do that in a heartbeat. I would go back. And I also want to thank Scotty for ordering the best weather he possibly could, because he knows I'm so much better when it's like sunny and warm. And so it was hard to believe that it was October.
I feel like that was the first time the weather had ever actually delivered. It was actually great weather.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, it wasn't me. It was
getting up in the pouring rain or, it being really cold. That just made it great. And I think Rob was saying the same because learning to cast with the heavier rod, the heavier fly, that would have been a little bit tougher if it was like windier or colder. It actually got windier the second day. Mm-hmm. Or was it the evening and the second day?
It definitely
not bad.
It wasn't bad. But yeah, if it gets windy, it can get pretty tricky.
Yeah. I think the only hard, do you want me to talk about that hard part?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it was the end of the first day. like buzzed on over to this other section, and then it's my chance again to get up and get going. And we had kind of a quiet couple, maybe hours, I think it probably was. And so we get into this one area, and so I think the first one was like right off the front of the boat. So I was like, okay. And it was a little bit windier.
It was the evening flood tide.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, kind of
so we were waiting for the water, to come in, and then we had just pushed in. And this is when you were on the front fishing. Oh,
yeah, okay. So the first one's like out front, and it had gotten a little bit windier, so my first couple casts, just trying to place it was a little bit harder. So I got it close, and everybody's getting all excited, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's one to the left!" And okay, we're gonna go for that one. So he turns the boat, and then again I'm going to that, and I'm super close. Nope, little to the left, little to the right. Okay, he's turning. He's like, "Oh my gosh, look off to the right of the boat!" And literally, then then it was like the back of the boat, and then there was, I don't know how many fish there were, 10 or something like that, but it was like here, then here, and we're trying for this, trying for that, and then I finally took the rod and was like, okay, I'm done. Like my brain,
it was overwhelming.
Yeah, I just had brain fart, and I kind of think I turned and was like, okay, here, your turn, and I kind of gave you the rod. It just ended up being so much all at once, and again, I think you get so excited that you see them, and so you're kind of like, okay, that one, okay, now this one, like this one, and I went, okay, but it was fun, but it was overwhelming.
I've never seen that many fish on a flood tide at the same time. Like it's overwhelming because you have so many options, right? Whereas it's really important with red fishing that you're 100% present and you're 100% focused, right? To make the best possible cast you can. But when you have 4 other fish around you and you're looking at this one fish, but then in the corner of your eye, you're like, oh my God, there's another fish. You're not fully into that fish.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
So I think, and that's what happened is, really as a guide, you're trying to instruct whoever's on the front to make the best cast possible, but you're also kind of speaking your stream of consciousness, right? So Rob's up there, he might be pulling, and in the corner of his eye, oh my God, there's another fish. Oh my, all right, let's go for this one, right? So you're just making these decisions so quickly, and
I think
it was crazy.
Wasn't it at one time, then all of a sudden he goes, okay, all right, stop, we got to go for one fish. And he just, because he realized he was getting, like you said, he realized he was getting so excited because he's like, oh my gosh, as a guide, this is phenomenal to have this many, fish for the fisherman experience. But then I think he himself just went, okay, oh my gosh, okay, stop.
Yeah, let's slow down. Take a deep breath.
We're going to go.
Because you said you were at a point that you were almost at a breaking point of this is too much.
Oh yeah, I almost felt like
and then that was
my anxiety was so high. And it's a good one because it was an excitement one, but then it was it's my first day doing it. Yeah. So he's like, oh, okay. But instead I just kind of handed the rod off, and you took it from there though.
Didn't see a fish for 30, 40 minutes. And then we finally had a shot, buzzer beater shot at the end, which was really fun. Pretty much used my, my trout tactics and made a little roll cast essentially on this fish, and he just ate it. It's so cool.
And it wasn't that he just ate it though. He ate it and then
oh yeah, he took off. It was great.
I thought that was kind of fun. One of the things we were talking about in the boat too, about how when you're red fishing, it's so shallow. We were in 1 to 2 feet of water. And again, that was something new to me, but you guys were saying that once the fish then takes off, that's why they go so hard, is because they just go away. They're not going down deep, they're going away. And that one took off, and I think it didn't almost come around under the boat, and then it went back out. And then that experience for me was so different too, because I don't know if you want to talk about it later, but kind of behind the scenes, I had been behind the scenes for some of the pre-trips. I hadn't been, actually on a production before. And so that was amazing. So when you were doing that fish, there was it was a little chaotic because it was getting dark and we knew we had to get out of there soon. We had to get the fish. But so I was able to do that filming and had the GoPro. And, we were filming it on that, and then there's kind of issues because it was taken off, and then Rob's trying to help you, land it. And then you land it, get in the boat, and we're like, okay, now here's this camera. Okay. And then I was kind of okay, great. Well, here, let me set it up. But meanwhile, you're holding this fish that can't be out of water and, trying to get ready. And then Rob's helping out with that. And, getting ready to do the release and everything. So then grabbed that camera and was doing that. So it was really neat to be a part of that whole part of the production part of it. Cause yeah, you have like just a second to really capture, or it was probably longer than that, but just such a short time to really capture, from the start of it, catching it all the way through to, bringing it on board and then getting that great, picture that we did. And then again, we were on that clock, like, okay, then reel it all in, let's go. And, zip
Water's
up your
down.
jackets,
Yeah.
put the hood on, and we got to like fly back out of here because we won't be able to be in that spot for very long and had to get back to the dock. So yeah, that was cool, that buzzer beater. And Rob had just talked about it. He's like, oh, I remember this one time, he was telling this little story. And then we had like this buzzer beater, and it was probably 10 minutes later.
Yeah, I mean, it was just about dark at this point. Like the sun had crested over the horizon, and so it was just the whatever light we had left, and it was just by by the minute, by the second, you could almost see it getting darker.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to finish it that first day like that.
It was actually, when I was filming, it's like a silhouette for you because the sun was setting so deep down there in the back, and it actually looked like a silhouette, basically.
Looked like you knew what you were doing behind the camera.
Oh yeah, learned a little bit, but.
So what did you think of that experience? Because you don't really typically get to see that on site, on production, process. What was it like to be a part of that, and then just be able to even help film, like hold the GoPro? That was really helpful.
Yeah, I guess, gosh, the word that would come to mind would be such an incredible appreciation for what you do. I mean, even that first night when we got there, before we even went out fishing, I literally had to be careful where I was walking. There must have been, 20, we used every outlet, I think, in that Airbnb. We used every outlet because there was so much. Well, you were very good at the organization.
That part I am.
Because he had, batteries everywhere, just like plugged in, and, just knowing what cameras you needed. And, the boat really wasn't that big. And so everything you needed to get that organized so we zip out of there at like, I think 5:30 in the morning to have that all ready to go so that you were prepared. That part of it was really neat. And then also I learned a lot, like you have as a filmmaker in your ideas, like kind of in your plan, what you want to do. And then you have what you need to do it, but then all of a sudden you get there and they can just like change in a dime. Like if the weather would have changed, or even like the lighting changed a lot from, I think it was the second day when we had so much more cloud cover. That changed. Just like the flexibility that you have and kind of seeing that in the filmmaking, but then also learning like where the whole story's going and what you need to do in those little pieces to get the story to go together. That was great. It was funny at one time though. I was gonna get a bottle of water out of the cooler, and I looked down and I'm like, and just trying to step around to get to the cooler. I was like, okay, there's 2 cameras there, and then there's the GoPro here, and then I'm
working on that.
No, but I was meaning it more from, there's a lot, like there just was so much that goes behind doing it. Like you had to have the equipment, I guess I should just say. It was like there's just a lot of equipment, and you're used to using it, and you know exactly when to use it and where it is. But that was for me kind of an eye-opening experience. I was like, wow, I kind of thought you just had a GoPro and one camera that you used. Mm-hmm. Yeah, being a part of that. And then also even like wasn't nervous or anything, but it was just fun being also a part of actually getting to film you doing it. I didn't know how well it would work, but it was just fun being a part of that and going, oh my God, wow, this is cool, because you're catching the action right as it happens. And you
feel very much a part of the catch, right? When you are filming, instead of just standing there. I'm not saying it's bad to just stand there and watch.
Yeah.
But it is fun when you're the cameraman on the boat, right?
Yeah.
And someone's fishing, someone's pulling, and you're right there in your third eyes, but you're also capturing the experience.
It definitely gets you like more immersed in it. And then I think the fun thing was we got to go over some of the video just because it was fun to watch the night before, and it helped me to learn like just a little more of the casting. But I got to see what I had filmed of you, and it like got me really excited because I was like, wow, okay, captured what that day or that fish that experience.
Capture that moment.
Yeah. So that was kind of neat. And then I learned just from like us talking a lot too, that whole weekend, just what actually does go behind the production. Like there's the pre-production. Well, and obviously for this trip, you had so much to do too, because you did set up all the surprises and, set that whole thing up. And Rob was a part of the plan long in advance. But just that there's so much prior to going to the trip that you actually have like these, like thoughtful organizational kind of like tidbits that you have set up, and then it's all part of the bigger picture of it. And then, what we needed to get, like what you needed to shoot that day. And, like the boat's going in. So, okay, we've got the perfect lighting, but you only have that lighting for X amount of time. So let's do it. It was kind of the same as him as a guide. He's like, all right, you got to be here at, 6:00 because we got to put that boat in and get to that spot, at the right time. And, so kind of like his clock and his tide work was that. It was exciting. It was so great to be a part of it. And
yeah, it was amazing.
I'm going to tell you, one part of the production was different, is I just wasn't used to being the one like this.
In front of the camera?
No, in front of the camera and talking. And then it's kind of weird when we watched it back that first night, because I was like, oh,
You did great, though. You did great.
I don't know. It was just weird.
It is weird when you
hard.
watch yourself back on camera, because when are you taking a video of yourself of what you're doing and then rewatching yourself, right? I've gotten used to it because it's what I do, but it still, even to this day, is weird talking. Like you turn that camera like right here, and it's just this, almost looks like this black abyss. Like, oh my gosh, do I have to say something?
Yeah.
Do I have to perform? And you did a very good job, I think, of just being yourself, which was the goal of this. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that was a different experience, but
yeah,
it's good. It's probably good for everybody to do that.
Yeah. No, I think
it's kind of like public speaking,
Yeah, totally. And it also allows you to, and this is the same with the podcast, it allows you to basically watch back how you talk, how you speak, how you present yourself, and you can be like, oh, maybe I say like too much. Like I'm probably saying like way too much on this podcast, or maybe I should slow down when I'm talking. And that was one of the intentions with starting the podcast. Was when I first started it, I wanted it to be kind of an easier thing to do, not this massive production, but as a way to become better at conversation, get better at interviewing, better at listening, and I think hopefully continuing to do that with the podcast. But
no, that's great. And being able to take what you want to say, like, take it in your brain, process it, and make it like a little bit shorter and more to the point. Mm-hmm. There's a couple times I was like, right after like the camera was off, I went, oh my gosh, what I really wanted to say was just this. And it was like in such a short way, but you can't really think about. But regardless, I mean, I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, look how excited I got. But then I'm like, that's so great, because that was pure excitement catching that fish. Who cares if my hands were flapping or,
oh yeah,
or whatever. When I looked at it, I was like, that was the moment. Like, that's what I felt like.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
No, it was great. I'll definitely remember that trip for forever. But
oh my gosh,
I want to backtrack a little bit and hear about because you were the one who introduced me to fly fishing way back in the day. And I want to hear about your upbringing, how fly fishing was involved in your life. And then maybe you can talk a little bit on the lineage and the history of fly fishing in our family. Yeah,
that's great. It's just amazing, first of all, before I back up, that we're sitting here doing this right now, because I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, I remember, saying to Scotty, wow, when we moved down to Charlotte, you're just going to have to hook up with my brother, because we all grew up fly fishing. And you, like as a little kid, I think 2nd, 3rd grade, then on, I was always at the docks with you in Minnesota, bringing books and, whatever I was doing, and you'd have a buddy and you would fish for hours and hours and hours. It was amazing. You guys would never quit. Can we go tomorrow? Can we go tomorrow? And I'd just go out to the docks and hang out with you guys. And you just had such a passion for it. And I think, what did we say? It was like pike? What were you fishing?
Yeah, bass, pike, walleye, whatever was in the lakes in Minnesota.
The one time you hooked that, do you remember?
Snapping
turtle? And I remember that was not fun. We cut the line and we're like, okay, we're done. But yeah, that was super fun. All those times were fun. But then if I back up and go all the way back, I think I can remember fly fishing probably maybe around the same, like maybe 5th, 6th grade or something. But on my mom's side, her brother was a fly fisherman, and her dad, my mom's dad, actually used to tie flies for Orvis. And I remember when and they lived out like in upstate New York, right on kind of the Vermont border. So we were living in St. Louis, and so we would always drive out there for a month or so. My parents are both teachers, so it was great. We'd have the whole, summers to do that. And we would drive out there, and I remember like sitting right next to him with all his fly tying gear, and he had that little, I think it was like a magnifying glass, this real big one they would have. I would sit right next to him. And he would say, yeah, we're doing a, bread crust right now. And then he would like teach me as he was doing it and say like, oh, and then this fish, we use it in the Battenkill River. And this is a fly that it's going to be underwater, or this is a,
dry fly.
Yeah, whatever. He would give us kind of the reasons or give it to me. And I remember sitting there and watching him, and he would tell me how you would make these because it would match the fly that was there. And anyway, I was really intrigued early on. And my brother's like 2 years younger, and my sister's 2 years older, and we were all fishing. So my mom got my dad into it, because her dad got into it. So it was really fun. So he got into it. So we would take sometimes these trips, and we would go up there, and we'd go for the whole day on the river. And most of it was it was all wading. It was all wading. So my grandpa would tie the flies, and then we would go down, and, it's kind of funny, like, because my dad, I'm sure, would want to fish, and he has all these, the kids with him and trying to get all the, there's a lot of gear and learning how to do it, but we would like practice in the field before we'd go. I can remember all that. And one summer, actually, we had my uncle, they had a cabin kind of up on the banks that they owned. And so we would go there a lot and then go right down, and then we'd fish that part of the river there. And then one summer when we brought our camper, we actually, instead of going to the campground, we camped right down there on the water. I mean, and it was awesome. So when, after you're done, you're just hanging your waders right around and everything. But one time I'll never forget, I think I told you this story, but I got up and put my wader on. It was kind of, you put your feet in, you put into it, and then you actually put that into a boot. And I went and put my foot in there, and there was a mouse. And I think I shot to the other side of the river, and I was like, okay. But I'll never forget that as part of the fishing. But that was great. I think it was a lot of dry fly fishing that we did. But then it was really cool. So on the other side of the river, my dad and my uncle and another friend, they basically put together and made this campground. So it was a campground. And then in the front of the campground, he had his little Battenkill Angler's Nook. And it was this fishing shop. And so, we would hang around the campground and stuff. But a lot of times we might even be in that shop. And it was just so, I remember from way back, they'd come in and like looking for the right flies, or I don't remember if we actually had gear, but I remember we had like the flies and stuff. And he, my grandpa would just talk to them about where to go fish, and just his, again, passion. It's just amazing to think that my grandfather and then my dad loved it, shared that with his kids. And my brother has 3 boys that they used to live in Seattle. And so they got into it probably much faster right off the bat. And I was always into it, but I hadn't done it for the longest time up in Minnesota. And so then when we came down here, it was super fun because he took you, I think, on a couple trips. And I don't think even on those trips you actually probably didn't catch a fish, right? So then
I didn't personally.
Yeah, I'm sure you, but you love, like, you were right away. I saw this passion that you had, that you absolutely loved it. So then we went, and I took you down in Gatlinburg, and we went and did that. It was in the summer, so we had to go in a really covered.
In the Smokies, the kind of small stream, tight
really
quarter,
small,
stealthy.
Like, sort of like, stealth fishing, which I had never done that, but I had obviously done the fly fishing. And I remember I was so excited to take you on that, and, to get your fish and first fish. And of course I catch the fish first. I was like, oh my gosh, like I really wish more than anything that could be, his fish. But it was way back. I saw your passion of just the whole, you had such calmness about it. loved it, but you were incredibly patient, and you just loved I think the art of it. And I think you actually also really, really enjoyed, as I think you did later on, but you just enjoyed the peacefulness of being out on the stream. I think that was so evident right away. And then it was great. And then the guide finally, I think it was the very last hole, you got it. And I mean, what was that like for you if you remember back to that first fish?
It was still like, I think a feeling that I'm still kind of chasing. It's like almost a high. You catching your first fish on a fly rod. I remember it was on a little ant pattern, and yeah, it was the last hole. And he's like, "All right, dude, you're gonna get out there and do it yourself. I've been helping you out all day. Let's see if you can put it all together." And went up there and just a textbook hole, made a cast. Rainbow came up, ate the dry fly, ate the little ant, and it was yeah. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, it was such a special moment, and then especially do it there with you, and that's when I really think I started to get it and fall in love with the more of the remoteness of fishing, or the hiking in aspect of it. Because we hiked into that creek, and then we got in and we found this creek, and that usually I was used to just driving up, parking next to the river, hop down to the creek, and you start fishing. We were also fishing for wild fish.
So they were like the smaller, but like I think kind of feistier fish. And we were actually, I remember like down on, on our knees down there and doing like different types of casting. I mean, he did such a good job of, getting us in the right position to do it. But, you couldn't really cast much because there was so much, above you that you really kind of had to, but you had to stay. So I think that was the only place that the stream was cold enough, probably.
Yeah. In that part of the summer.
Yeah.
But I feel like I wanted to catch a fish so bad, right? And that was my stage of fly fishing then, was I wanted to just catch a fish so bad.
Yeah.
But I do feel like those times, or before and then going forward in high school with the cousins and Uncle Shock, being able to go make trips to the mountains, I think that's when I really fell in love with the whole experience of it, being with the cousins for the weekend, and it was just us. We were up in the mountains, no service. Like, we were just hanging out with each other, learning this thing that we were all super into. And so that, I feel like that's kind of translated into what I've tried to capture and what I've tried to share through Wildfly, is that experience, because it's very easy to just be so into the fish and you lose sight of all these other things that are there.
When I think for all of you guys, you could see that with the, my brother's 3 boys and you, when you'd go in, sometimes like I would even go, it was never about like how many you were going to catch. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Oh, it was for a little bit.
Or maybe. Well, especially when you hadn't caught any.
Exactly.
But I think so much of the time, like you said, and I think you've actually just segued that more than now that you've said it. Like, that is really what comes through. And I get that a lot with like the emails that come in. People are like, wow, he's so real and passionate about what he's doing, and really sharing like the art of fishing instead of just having it be, like, did you get the biggest one or how many did you get? And if you really think about it, you go back. I mean, me as a mom, thinking about it now, watching, like, it really was a, DIY trip. It was from you guys watching all your YouTube videos, and then we'd hear you, and they're going, we need this gear, and then, we got to go to this shop and get this gear, and then you'd get it all, and you'd either be in the garage or inside the house getting all hyped, and okay, we got to pack this, and would you have this? No, okay, well, I got that, get the right flies, and it was just so fun to hear you guys all do all that. And then it's like all the little, peanut butter jelly sandwiches in bags, and getting it all ready so that you had food on the water. And but that really did start way back then. And then you guys filming it, and you'd come back and watch and just laugh. Oh, remember that fish, and oh, that was so cool, dude. And it was really fun to sort of hear that off in the distance, and to see how that's translated now into where Wildfly is today. But fun to think how far back that goes.
The coolest part for me too now is when I get messages or I talk to people out in public or in meetups, and they tell me that like, oh, dude, I always throw your videos on the night before I go fishing, or something like that, or hey, your videos help me get into fly fishing. Because what we were doing at that age was we would plan a weekend trip to the mountains to drive 2 hours up there. And we were watching fly fishing films, getting excited, getting hyped up to go fish ourselves. And we were packing all our gear. And then at some point I was like, we should just film this. This would be so cool to document this. And the cool thing is there's people doing that now with my videos, which is, it's like come full circle.
Oh yeah.
Because that's how I first got into filming fly fishing. And that's how I got excited to go fish and go make a trip to the mountains, was through watching other people do it. And so, to hear even that one person would get that same experience that's what makes this all worth it for me.
That's crazy. And it was all on the little GoPros.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't like drones and there wasn't, the other different cameras.
The most basic gear we had, whatever we could afford.
That was great.
You were saying what?
I was just thinking of another thing, like growing up is funny because it was something that we did as a family. So my parents were teachers. So it was super fun. Like every year we would pick somewhere to go. So I remember we had like a jar and we would just like put money in it. And let's say like in one year we had some friends like in Ennis, Montana. So we're like, okay, we're going to go on a trip to Montana. So all year we would like, again, sort of like you're doing now, but we would, plan it out and have this jar and we just, put our change and everything in there. And then we would talk about almost the whole year. So we would think about, okay, so we're going to go visit our friends in Ennis, Montana. And they lived on this huge ranch. And so we drove out there and they let us camp right on, I think it's the Madison River, probably. Yeah, I think it's the Madison. Anyway, let us camp like right there with like all their cattle and everything. So you'd wake up in the morning, come out of your, your camper and you're like, okay, wow, there's like, cattle and everything all around. But I remember we did that for almost a whole year. Like we're doing the planning thing. And to think that our whole family would go out and, my dad would get us all lined up fishing, and of course, like for me, when I would catch it, even way back then, I definitely didn't want to hold it. So if he was like upstream and I was like down here, he'd have to truck all the way down there to help me like, at the end catch it and get it in the net and all that. But it was such a fun thing that all three of us kids got to do with him. And I think like with you and I know I've always enjoyed it. And then I enjoyed doing the fishing with you early on when you were little, right up until we moved down here. But the couple of times that we've gotten to do like that one float trip and, a couple other times that we've been able to do it has just been such a blast that you and I can share the same thing, the same love of, the art of fly fishing. And I think a lot of it is kind of like you guys on your trips. Yeah, it was catching the fish, but it's the experience. It's the almost like that opportunity to be together. It's like you and the, three Herman boys. It's the opportunity to get together. So it's, the time in the river, but I bet almost as much fun is the time that you guys have back in the cabin, hanging out, talking the fish stories, but then just like reconnecting. And I think that was one thing for me growing up was really fun is we would do that as a family. That was one of the best family things that we did was, we were outside and enjoying, the outdoors and, whether we caught fish or not, of course we always wanted to, but, whether we caught them or not wasn't the biggest part of it. And then we saw the country that way. And it's, again, so fun for me to see like, oh my gosh, where's Scotty today? Oh yeah. So he's in Alaska. Or wait, no, he's in the British Virgin Islands. That's right. Should I be praying tonight that their boat's okay? Like where is he? But it's that's the experience that I kind of grew up with in a different way. And maybe not as exotic. Didn't go to Alaska.
Not yet.
I'm hoping we can add that in there. Wouldn't want to even say that after having such a great trip that we just did. But it was honestly one of the best weekends. We like on the water and the fishing was great. Sitting around talking about the business and where things are going and like my part of it and all that. But we just had such great conversations that had you not had this weekend, we wouldn't have that over the phone. We wouldn't get to talk and discuss things and enjoy it in such a nice setting. We went out to a great dinner second night, just overlooking the water. And I think you got to try more types of seafood than you've ever tried.
Yeah.
But it was just super fun to sit there and like recap. And we got in such great, life conversations. And I think sometimes you really have to plan that. Otherwise they're gone. I mean, you have to plan that. My mom died very early and, I think about that. Like I had some great experiences with her, tons of vacations and life experiences and stuff, but it's so important. Like, don't hesitate. Like, I don't know if I can do it, or I don't know if I should do it. That happened to me this year. I hadn't seen my college friends in forever, and I kept putting it off. I was like, nope, I'm going to do it. So my 4 college roommates, we hadn't seen each other in 15, 16 years, and we all got together, and it changed my life. There was, different people were going through different things, and gosh, I don't even know if the home that we stayed in that she has in Naples is even still there. But I went and did it. I think that's one of the things that's really important about this. Plan it. Plan that trip, whatever it is, a day hike or whatever it is. Super important. It just, you can connect, and it just puts you into a situation that you can't really do it on a phone, or you can't really. Sometimes I think you get so busy in day to day that you just don't make that a priority. Mm-hmm. Or it costs money, or, it costs this. But that's where I am now. I would so much more put money into experiences than I would put it into having something. Let's say if it's a Christmas thing or whatever. I mean, we got all excited, hey, this would be so fun. My brother would love this, and it'd be a great experience, for him. That'd be a great gift, I just think that's probably, and I think that's what's probably more different about fly fishing than some of the other ones. It is actually more of an experience when you're there. It's just a little more, focused, and could take a little bit longer before you catch.
Well, it's certainly not the easiest way to catch a fish. So you take that out of it, right? You could easily go catch a bazillion redfish with a spinning rod in certain areas. Like Rob said, he does that with certain clients. Huh. He prefers the fly, but you're choosing to fish the harder way, right? But there's also more that goes into it, and I think it's eventually more rewarding. But that's like what we're seeking out. Someone else might just want to go catch as many fish as possible. But to your thing on planning a trip and doing it, I think what I've kind of I've come to realize over the years is you have to do stuff even if you're not fully prepared. And
that's
you can't wait to be fully prepared to do something. Like for this surprise trip, for example, I did some planning, a bunch of planning on the front end, but I was so nervous the couple days even leading up to it and the day of traveling, surprising you, going down. Not everything was set in stone, right? I didn't know we were going to eat when we got down there. I didn't know exactly how the surprise was going to go, right? Things just happen. And so I think if you can get through that, knowing that you're not fully prepared, but you can just go for it, it's gratifying. And my perfectionism in me hates it, and so it's good. It's a good way to combat that perfectionism. And I feel like I get that from you, because, or not the perfectionism, but you and I are both perfectionists in our own way. Mm-hmm. But what I recognize looking back is you were always documenting stuff, right? You were always taking photos of stuff we were doing and putting into scrapbooks and printing photos and just always having, documenting the experience of what we were doing growing up. And so I feel like that in turn helped me get into it and find my own way to do that through video. And it just happens to be fly fishing.
That's the extra connection. You're right. I remember we would have, you guys would just every once in a while just get out those books, and you would just sit there and be like, oh yeah, look at this, or remember this, and kind of, reliving it that way. But I think just like you said, maybe your perfectionism of not knowing, like on this trip, how it was going to turn out, or, like where you're going to eat, or things like that. But for me on the other end, I'm such a planner that I think I was saying this to you, like, I was first of all blown away when you like walked across and up onto their porch. I was so in shock, and then once I got over the shock and I read the card of what we're doing and everything, that darn planner in my head then started like, instead of, I'm not going to say no to it, but had it not maybe been that situation, I might have been like, oh my gosh, I can't find 2 dog sitters, or a sitter for our 2 dogs for 2 days, and gosh, I have a basketball training on Thursday and another one on Sunday. Got to cancel all those. Like all of a sudden, like that starts spinning. But it was kind of fun because it was a surprise. You just do it. Mm-hmm. And if we could be more like, I wish I could be more that way, like much more, on the fly, just like, hey, yeah, let's go do that for this weekend, or, not take some of the planning out of it. So it's just a little more spontaneous. Yeah. Like I wish I had a little more of that. But I mean, I think the planning helps me in a lot of.
There's certainly a balance there.
Yeah.
That I think we're both trying to figure out, but you need to leave room for spontaneity, especially with documenting something that's real, like fly fishing or an adventure like that.
Surprise trip. Yeah.
But then also being able to plan out, I think I was coming into this trip, I was a little more prepared on at least knowing the moments that I wanted to capture instead of just filming everything, where I've done that on a lot of projects in the past. Especially the last time I was down fishing on the coast and Sailboat Diaries, you're trying to find the story while you're there. So you want to document everything. But I think I planned a little bit more ahead on this one, where I knew what the story was. I knew what I wanted to share, the key moments that may happen. So being ready for those moments if they happen. And then being okay with, okay, I can stop filming right now because I don't need this, which has always been really challenging, especially when you're in a beautiful place like the Low Country.
Yeah. What about this? Oh, I don't want to miss it.
Exactly. There's a few times where you're like, oh, you should shoot this. Look at those dolphins. I'm like, I could shoot those dolphins, but I don't really need that shot for the video.
Well, that's one of the things I think that I realized, because that night when we were going, kind of watching some of the video there, I realized now I get it, because the more you're filming, like, wow, the amount of footage that you would have to go through, times that by the 10 decisions you'd have to make as to which one, times, okay, I've got a certain amount of time now, I got to back up, and it makes so much more sense. Like you were even talking about that, the more it's planned, like the easier, maybe not easier, but yeah, it's so much nicer to have like less footage, but have it be specific footage, so that you have better footage you can go through and make those decisions, and just makes it easier, not having like
you have less decisions
hours
to make.
And hours of footage. Yeah, that was kind of neat to be there for that part of it. Yeah. I'm gonna do this because, and then like the boat going in, like that was so cool. Let's go get this while it's really dark and you just have like the lights of the boat, and and like this is a fishing video and all those dolphins over there, but wow, like that was part of our experience. And we didn't talk about the sharks, but the dolphins was definitely a part of it. It was fun to see.
Yeah. Well, talking on experiences, is there a particular memory that comes to mind that's like your fondest memory from growing up in the summers, going fly fishing or spending time with family? Is there a specific one that really resonates, or you really remember?
To think about that one. I mean, definitely that trip that I mentioned, that when we went to Ennis, like that was crazy because we'd never fished on a river like that, and the fish were obviously a lot bigger than the fish we were catching before.
And you're in a different landscape, and
yeah, it was really, really different. Gosh, I don't know. I don't think I can think of an exact.
Maybe if you can't think of an exact one, what was it about, because your parents were teachers and you did have the summers off, I think is very unique compared to a lot of other families. And so what was it about that experience that made it special, of having those summers and making those trips?
I honestly think it was all about family. Like that is what did it. We all got to spend time together doing things. Because, you just get, my parents are both teachers. They're in their job and we're in school. But I think that was it. We always got so excited, and that we loved being around our siblings, and that we just got to go as a family and take that vacation. I think that was probably the biggest part, is just being together and being outside. I think that's what kind of helped us to grow over the years, that, as, your kids get, like as a parent, your kids get older and then they go out of the house and somebody might be here and somebody might be living here. But that just, the summers kept us coming back, and, and then we went and got our cabin in Maine. We didn't fish very much there. But that was another same type of experience because you had the cabin there that then everybody, would come back for your week or, then my parents might have been there for 2 months or something. And we would come back with friends for a week or two. But I think that all started because it started way back when we were doing the fishing trips.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that was something that I really wanted to carry on with us, in our family. So,
well, we definitely did. And I think when I think back to, my childhood, the memories that come to mind are summers when we go to Maine to the cabin, or when we would go out to Seattle to see the cousins for Christmas, or now what we still do with our cousins is we have Christmas in the mountains here in North Carolina. We have a cabin. We did a podcast 2 years ago on talking with the cousins at the cabin, but yeah, I think that was definitely instilled in our family, and I want to continue forward because those, again, it's like goes back to the whole experiences deal. Like that was so memorable, even though we weren't making exotic trips to the beach or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like that was our one big trip of the year, was to drive out, spend a week or two in Maine with family, with the cousins, and then you just felt so much more refreshed going back home. And you just couldn't wait till you
I was
go
gonna
back
say,
the
then you
next
put it on the
year.
calendar for the whole next year. And I think that was part of it, like just being able to be, with my brother and all, like, their kids doing that was like one of the biggest parts of it, I think. And it is crazy. Like we were just talking about that this weekend about those, basically it's 3 nights and 4 days that we get together every year for Christmas. But legit, we talk about it, like, right? It's from finding the right cabin to house all of us, to where we're going to go, and are we going to ski and then fish and run, and, what are we going to do? But then those 3 nights, everybody completely reconnects. It's just not like just going back and just being with like a big family, like in your house. You're much more connected. I think that's what I would say. And you really get to see like what that person, hey, how's it been going for the last couple months? Or, there's a lot of similarities of interests that we just end up sitting around reading books, sharing books that we've read. And it's just, it's a good 3 days of just connecting that otherwise, we may not do. And I think very rarely, even as of late, are the phones out that much. I've got these couple days just to, hang out and do this. And a couple people might go skiing that night, and then maybe a couple others like fish the next day. But then others are hanging out at the cabin and we're making meals. And amazing that those like 4 days have an impact for the entire year. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
It's always a goal, though, I think, when we go there is, okay, I want to put my phone away and not look at it for as much as possible. And yeah, it's good to have that, and I want to instill that more into my life, as even if it's just a weekend away where I just go by myself, as a way to kind of refresh, think, read, kind of plan out the next couple months or whatever. But that is very important. I think I'm just so grateful that up until this point I don't like desire a lot of things. I know the things that make me happy, and like my bike, my skis, my fishing gear, and some other things that kind of help me with those. They help assist in those experiences. But outside of that, there's not many things that I feel like will make me really happy just to have or buy.
Yeah, but we were like joking around about that. I think over the weekend, you're like, I guess I need to buy my one pair of running shoes that I buy, for the year. I thought about that. I'm like, almost everything that you buy is either investment, and not even just like an investment in just wildfly, but investment and experience. So I was thinking about that. You put those two together. I mean, your bikes, your fly rods, all the things that you do end up buying is always an investment in an experience or an investment in something that's going to make an experience. Mm-hmm. And that's so huge. It's just not material, things that you have or that you have to almost like burden is more of a burden. These things are more like expanding, hey, it might be, these new type of, pads or bike shoes so that you can, not wipe out as much anymore because you're saying, but it's an investment in not just that like thing, that material thing, but it's investing in, I think, that experience, which again, really is going to go back to, you're not going to do many of those by yourself. So you're really investing in the opportunity to be around more friends, do more things.
Yeah. I think I've recognized that more as of late is it is one thing to go out and bike and it's really fun to do, but it is 10 times better if I'm going with a bunch of friends. You know, coming off the mountain, you know, everyone's hooting and hollering in the woods, just getting such a good rush. And, you know, everyone stops and just like is so stoked. That is the same with fishing. You know, I love fly fishing for what it is and the act of it. I think it's so fun and it's fun to do by yourself. But ultimately, I'm going to go with somebody else 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Just because of that shared experience that, you know, and I think if I've been lucky now in the West to surround myself with so many people that are in a similar boat. And I've told you this, but it's so, I don't know, it's just so, like, I feel so alive out there. And I'm not saying this, you don't have this elsewhere in the world or in the country, but where I'm at right now, I feel like I'm with such a good group of people that are in the same mindset. They have the same drive as me, and people are always doing stuff outdoors. And they're going to the mountain to bike, to fish, to ski.
Think about it. I mean, they're not going, hey, sure, you're going to go out to like a bar, go to dinner, whatever, and have a beer. But it's not like, okay, we're going to just go out and have dinner and everybody's going to sit around and talk. And sometimes that could be positive, negative, whatever. No, it's always an experience. Like that's what I've heard from you, you know, that it feels like out there.
Yeah.
Back to the mountain biking, which is, again, so funny because Dad and I did so much mountain biking in Minnesota, Wisconsin, everything. And then I was like, oh, Scotty, have you gone over your shoulder, your handlebars yet? And you're like, no. And then, so that's one of those reasons why it's probably was a good time to have all your buddies there. Because did you have a little experience?
But then recently I was like, actually, you know what? I have gone over my handlebars now. My legs are all beat up. And my legs hurt. Yeah, no, it's fun. But I mean, I think even back to growing up in Minnesota when we make small camping trips, an hour up to, you know, up north to Duluth or down south to, was it Rochester?
Oh, yeah.
Or that kind of area. Just
Decorah.
Yeah. Doing all those, I don't know, all those trips growing up I really appreciate it more now of where I'm at, you know. And I remember talking to people in college being like, you've never been camping? Like, you didn't grow up camping? I thought that's just how people grew up.
This is what it is, right?
But yeah, throwing yourself in a tent and having to sleep there for the night and then waking up to a fire, like that, those little things are just so fun.
You know, and it's funny that you say that because now I'm kind of putting myself back in like high school. And I remember parents, they worked at a private school. They were coach and teacher. And it's so funny because I remember whether it even be a spring break or a Christmas break, people were always going off to these like exotic places, you know, or like, oh, every year we're going to go to Florida, you know, and then they'd come back. And it just hit me right now. I remember they would come back and it was kind of like, yeah, we went to Florida. Like, I don't remember like any depth to it when they were, you know, coming back. And I remember, you know, because you're kind of in that impressionable age or whatever in high school. And I remember kind of going, oh, we never go anywhere. You know, we don't go anywhere. And I remember my parents going, what do you mean we don't go anywhere? And it was more like, well, we didn't go to the Bahamas or we didn't go here. And, you know, people would do that like in college. And instead we were doing these other trips. And, you know, at the time I may not have appreciated how much what we did was, you know, getting our families together. I mean, there's some people that don't even really maybe like take Christmas, for example. But yeah, we just go out to dinner and then we come back and everybody, I don't know, reads or we watch a movie or something like that. And I'm like, I'm so shocked that I think sometimes they may have had these experiences, and whether it was maybe they weren't a part of the planning, maybe they went on a cruise, or maybe they just did something where they took the family group and went there. But I never felt like they had the depth that we had from having kind of simple outdoor adventures that we actually had planned. And it seems like the same for Wildfly. When you guys do the planning versus, let's say, you just went somewhere and it was all done, you know. But I think sometimes that's nerve-wracking. Like, oh, I don't think I can do that. Like, you know, I don't think. And I hope kind of in the video that you're doing on this, that people look at it and go, she's never redfished ever. So she done some fly fishing, but she hadn't done that. You know, it's kind of like get up on the horse and just like do it. You fall off, you know, you get back up on that platform, you know, like you just got to go do it, I think. And I don't know. You just have to, especially nowadays versus 20, 30 years ago, I think you actually have to set the time away to say, I'm going to go do this. And then you come out of that with an experience so much more. Like I said, I just didn't see that with some of my friends that went all the exotic places. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to the Bahamas again. But it was like they were going to go and get tan. I didn't really hear about the experiences that we talk about growing up.
Yeah, and everyone does things differently, but that's just how, we both grew up and what I
appreciate it more, I
guess. for those experiences. To shift gears a little bit, I did have some other maybe more serious questions, or just some questions that I thought would be fun to ask you. But first, what is the most valuable advice that you've been given in your life?
Wow. Stop tape. No, I'm just kidding. Might have to come back to that.
Or if you can think of
such a good question.
Someone who was influential to you growing up or throughout your life, and maybe not even just simple quote or advice that they gave you, but just maybe why they were influential.
I think my parents were definitely influential in my upbringing. We might even have talked about this. I think one of the things that they did was they gave us experiences. And I think even though they may not have been, it was our own experience. It may not have been the same as like we were just talking about vacations like somebody else. But I feel like because of those experiences, I always gained so much confidence because I'd done it before. Because you know how like let's say somebody, for example, they haven't learned how to swim. So you're going to go put them on a boat. Well, then it's like, wow, okay, they're going to have the fear to be on the boat. Whereas I had these little experiences. I might not have been the best water skier, but I remember learning, in New Hampshire. I'm like, oh, that was great. And then when I went to a friend's house in Culver, Indiana, I remember they're like, oh, you know how to ski? Perfect. Let's do it off the back of the pontoon boat. Well, I've never done that. But, I had all these little experiences. And I think what it did is it gave me a lot of confidence growing up. And people would say that. They're like, wow, you're just confident. And I think it's because I was able to try different things, didn't necessarily have to be, the best at it. Gosh, I really know that there's probably a great experience, rephrase the question again. What was it like?
The best advice that someone's given you throughout your life.
Again, probably just through my parents. I think one of them was just basically like overall just kindness, like be kind. Because I saw them as an example. They were both teachers. And they just were so kind to everybody. And caring, I think. And that's so wild because that's what I see so much in you and Johnny too. It's just you guys are both such caring people. And I know that came. And I don't know if they, they didn't actually like maybe say it. They probably did in a certain way. But that was just something I think I picked up and learned from them is just about really caring, for other people. But I can't think of right now any like actual advice that somebody might. I'm sure it's there. I'll probably
we'll come
after this. I'll be like, oh,
we can totally come back to it if it comes.
Pops in my head. Yeah, that's a good question. No,
this is kind of off of that, but what is something that you wish younger people like myself knew earlier in life?
Younger people knew earlier. Well, it kind of seems like more and more a buzz phrase right now, but you just don't ever know. So like, do it now kind of a thing. I feel like I hear that a lot more now. Maybe it's COVID. I don't know, but I think I hear that a lot more now.
There's a lot more that you hear now because it's all on social media. It's all recorded.
Yeah. So that's probably, maybe it was the same like growing up, but I do think that's one thing I would definitely, tell kids. And I think the other thing would be just, and it's again, our age right now with social media and everything, but just not to compare. Like earlier on, and again, it's confidence. So when you have experience, you gain confidence. When you're loved and you're cared for in a family, you gain confidence. But it's hard to not compare. But I think that would be probably one of the biggest things. I know when I'm doing like my basketball training and even when I was coaching teams, I always tried so hard to somehow figure out how to be a mentor to instill that in young girls, confidence. Because I know without that, it's tough if you don't have confidence. And if I could get them to be confident just in like, oh my gosh, well, that was awesome because you did that dribble better than you've ever done it. And like, you just see like shoulders go up and, they hold their head up, and I see how important that is. I would think just the whole try to say don't compare as much. It's hard. It's hard because that's just like the whole thing right now. I think that's where everybody runs into issues. Just not comparing.
There's a good quote: "The comparison is the thief of joy."
My gosh. Oh my gosh.
Which is so true. It's tricky though. I think we had a good like heart to heart this weekend, just being able to talk and everything, and that certainly, confidence has certainly been something I've struggled with over the years. Whether it was just me not being confident in myself enough, or confident to do something or accomplish something or try something new. And I think a lot of that comes back to ultimately worrying about what other people are going to think about you. And I know that's still something that affects me and still is always in the back of my head, that voice in your head. It's always speaking there, but that has definitely, it was good to talk about that this weekend and bring it to light and know that I'm not the only one that deals with that. It's just part of being human, and but recognizing that, and hopefully I can work on that going forward and improve upon just being who I am and not worrying about, especially it's very hard when I'm filming and I'm putting this out, and the more it grows, the more people it's reaching. So it almost becomes, I don't know, you can look at it can become trickier because you're like, am I just going to be 100% myself? And what if these people, you get a nasty comment about you, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to,
so what?
Yeah. What was
Who
it?
cares? What's next?
Yeah. I love that. So what? Who cares? Well, yeah. And who's next? Or what's next?
What's next? Or move on. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great
So what?
quote.
Who cares? Like, move on. And we all, or so what? Who cares? What's next? But two things that you brought up in there, which I think are big parts of it, is one, vulnerable. Like you have to be, I am right now. You have to be vulnerable in what you're doing. Right. But I think sometimes that if you're not that way, there's like really not any growth. And then I think there's also this ability to be confident, which I was talking about, which I think is such a thing. But then there's also that whole other side of it that's ego, So I think that it's so important that you need to be confident in who you are, like as a person. But I think sometimes then, again, as the years go on, I think it gets worse and worse. But, just because I have this job and this house and this car or whatever, that should give me my confidence, versus like being able to be vulnerable and get through that and be like, wow, I just did that. Like somebody may say something totally negative, or they may laugh at me for using my hands too much or whatever. And it's like, like I always said in basketball, like next play, just, it is what it is. And I think that's what I mean by like the confidence to go, oh, that's okay. Or like even the night we were watching the video, I was like, oh, I didn't know I look like that. Or I did that same thing all the time. Or I talk really fast, or it was hard. And then I forget what you said. You said that's like, because I said, oh, that's just like everybody when they see themselves are just not.
It's normal. When you first see yourself on film, you're just like, oh, you cringe,
Yeah. But that could, affect, people's, confidence, I guess. If they did that too much. But I think that was one of the things I always said, in having kids. One of the things we wanted them to be able to do is to have a lot of, to have them have confidence in themselves. Because that's, I don't know, it's like your rock, your balance, your base, or whatever that you need to go move forward on.
Mm-hmm. Really like in the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. She talks, it's all about vulnerability in there, and she brings up the Man in the Arena speech by Teddy Roosevelt, which essentially is like if let's say, for example, I'm filming videos, right? And you get a comment, and I've been doing all this hard work, putting these videos together, putting myself out there, and you get a comment from some slinger 69 on YouTube, right? Who's never picked up a camera. He doesn't even have a profile picture on his page. That dude doesn't know at all what it's like to go try to make a video, try to grow a YouTube channel, try to put yourself out there with the chance of failing. Like, he's probably never done that in his life. So you have to be able to take in, he's not in the arena, essentially. That guy has not been in the arena doing the work, trying. So I'm not going to take his criticism or his comment to heart at all, right? But if there is a friend of mine who, like Will Phelps or Bryant, these two talented filmmakers who give me some feedback, oh, hey man, maybe you could have done this a little bit differently. I'm actually going to respect their opinion and listen to their opinion because I know that they've been through the ringer and they understand it and they get it.
Yeah. It's kind of like that filter, because you have a filter probably now in your head that you can say, okay, that person probably is just so easy. I'm sitting there watching. Okay, dislike, make a comment. Like, that's so easy, right? I mean, there's no repercussions or anything for that. And you don't know where they're coming from, but you do know the experience that those other people have. And so you're able to process like, oh, okay, I don't need to be, upset. Or even if it was like something to help you out, you can be like, oh, I can take that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that was one of the things as a mom to you that I've seen is I shouldn't say amazed because I've seen it like all your life, but I'm just in awe, and I think I'm so grateful that one of the biggest qualities that you possess is how humble you are, and it's great. Like I was thinking of an example how when I drove you out, we were going to drive out to Utah, and so we were stopping at Breckenridge to go skiing. And we stopped in to I think get the breakfast and everything. And I ran into the bathroom and I come out, and one of your many where the person later on, I find out, he recognized you. Oh, you're the wallfly guy, but you don't really even say anything. And I was like, oh, who's that? You're like, oh, I don't know, just some guy that, was happy about wildfly. And I was like, that's so cool. It just very, very humble. But then there's so many other times I've seen it. Like, I know we were floating on the river on Father's Day. And I think I was a kid and a dad maybe that were over there. They were yelling as we're floating down, hey, you're the wildfly guy or something like that.
Yeah.
But immediately right away you turned it how's your day going? And what are you guys catching? And I was so proud of that. Just how humble. And you put yourself right into that person too. They're there doing what you love to do as well. And you're not okay, I'm here, they're there. And I think that shows the passion that you have just across the board. And I know we were just talking about confidence, and I just wanted to throw that in there because I think that's such a neat thing that I know I'm so proud of, because it's just
thank you,
nice to be around.
Yeah. Well, obviously I think that's thanks to you and Dad and my upbringing, I know that I'm able to recognize that I'm nothing special. I just happen to make fishing videos and put them online, and I've become better at it over the years and been able to reach more people that way. But still, at the end of the day, it's not like I have anything crazy different than anyone else has. Anyone else can do this. I just happen to be doing it right now, right? And just people have seen the process and the stage. And
well, that's true. But I also I'm on the other end of it too, because I get a lot of the emails, and some of them are just they're so inspiring, because they won't say that it's just the video that got them, let's say, to go buy the rod, to get the flies, to go out fishing. The word they use over and over again is they're inspired. They're like, wow, one, you either inspired me to get off my couch and get outside, something super simple like that, to veterans that have said it has literally changed their lives, or somebody just emailing and just saying, hey dude, I love the way you do it. It's not fish porn, and it's just the way that you've presented it that really hit me hard and gave me the confidence. That's what I think is so neat. I hear that over or read it, but over and over, that the way it's presented, and it's coming from your heart, and like you look back to, you know, where you started and where you've come, but the way you present it has just made these people go, oh my gosh, I can do that. You know, even probably even like your big sailboat trips, things like that. Like, oh my gosh, we can do this. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, I don't know.
Yeah, the films, that's my art. That's my medium of art, right? Instead of a painting, instead of a music, it's film, and that is just an extension of myself. It's an earnest expression of who I am.
Yeah.
And each time I feel like every video is me just trying to present myself or better express myself in the full form and fashion, right? In a better way. So like each time is just an attempt. It's just another attempt at me trying to be myself on camera or trying to present something how I feel and see it. And I think I talk about this a lot, but you know, you can't wait for a video to be perfect for it to be finished, or else you're never going to finish it. And so the videos over the years have become better because I think there does get to a certain point where I just have to release it. It's like, this is good enough to put out. I could be nitpicky and I could, you know, mess with it for another 2 weeks and then never even release it. But you kind of have to just put stuff out there.
And how'd you get over that though? Kind of like we were talking about before, like advice wise, like how did you get like kind of over that hump of, you know, I can't, I am a perfectionist, but I can't wait for it to be perfect. And then it would never get out there. Like, how did you get over that? Like, what was that transformed that?
I think Casey Neistat has a huge influence on me. I've talked to you about him before.
Oh, I remember watching the vlogs.
Because he would make daily vlogs, and he's just this guy in New York who is just ripping around on a longboard.
Was just
yeah. He actually just moved back, but beyond the point. He was doing it in such a rough way. Like, his filmmaking style is very rough, and it's very just run and gun DIY. Everything he does, like, he makes his captions and his intros and everything.
Paper.
He'll write it out on paper, you know, and it's just so real. And so I think that gave me a lot of confidence to be like, oh, I can talk to the camera. I can figure out a way to express myself and share that. And it doesn't have to be this cinematic masterpiece. And what I've realized over the years, especially this past year, is people don't really care at the end of the day about it being super cinematic. You're gonna tune out of a video, whether you shot it on a Red camera, $50,000+ camera, or an iPhone camera, if you don't have any connection to it. So that's great. It's a good shot, and it technically looks good. But people are connecting on YouTube with, and just content in general, they're connecting with people and stories that they can see themselves in as well. And so I think, understanding that, and it's just human psychology, I think, at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, it's so real. Like you said, if you like were to edit it so much that it wasn't even like real, then I think you'd lose the interest. And I think two, for sure, that would make it even more so that people would feel like I can't go fly fish, you know, or I can't go do a solo trip, you know. That was a good example of that film, you know, where you're just, I mean, that was vulnerable and that was raw. And
yeah, I was nervous. I was so nervous going into that because when I was doing it by myself, you know, I had to set up all my cameras. I had to motivate myself, like, hey, you're going to get up a little earlier to get this, shot of you, or you're going to have to, like, in the morning, or you're going to have to set up the tripod for you to go fish, and then you're going to have to go back and pick up the camera from the tripod. So there was a lot when you're on your own, when I was on my own, that I was not fully confident in, but I just had to kind of do it. But then back to the perfectionism thing, again, from that book, Daring Greatly, she talks about how a good book that is published is better than a perfect book that is never written, or something like that. And essentially, you can probably gather what that means. You know, if you put something out that is good, and you actually put the work in, maybe it's not perfect, but you at least put it out. It's better than being a perfectionist and never even finishing a project. So
I think Ryan Holiday talked about that too, wasn't it? When he was saying, people were saying, oh, you should put out this book and this type of book or whatever. He's like, oh my gosh, this is what I love. And so I'm just going to start with this because I think it's marketing. I just love marketing. And so I'm just going to do it. It's maybe not going to be perfect and maybe not what other people want, but it's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put it out. And then 12 books later.
Yeah. With stoicism, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great example of essentially, I feel like I say essentially a lot.
See the book, essentially.
A great example of publisher wanting you to write a certain type of book, or maybe it's an industry wanting to see a certain type of film or a certain type of thing. And he was like, no, I'm interested in stoicism. I don't care if I get half the budget for this book. I want to do this. And then now that's literally become his career, and it's impacted millions and millions of people throughout the world. So I feel like that's something that I'm grateful for too, of you and Dad being coaches and chasing, that's what you guys have enjoyed, even though it doesn't pay, the same as if you were to work in a banking job or, any other kind of job that might pay more. It wasn't like you guys were chasing money. Because you were chasing that's just what you like to do, and that's what you wanted to do. I felt like I got that, and I was like in college, and I didn't want to just go work behind a desk just because that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of follow where my intuition was and where my heart was, which was making films.
But think about, that's a perfect example when you go back to kind of that whole question too of what it would be something really good to give people as something that's super important. Think about that. You could have just been like, well, everybody's just doing that. I'm graduating and like, okay, well, that's what people are doing. They're going to go get this job and knowing darn well. I mean, we laughed about it this weekend. Like, we're so much better at like not like having a boss, being able to, be more entrepreneurial about the things that we're doing. I know for me, like when I got into coaching and my dad was a coach, such a good mentor, as a coach. But what I always saw goes kind of back to that whole caring, that he just cared so much. So even though he wanted to make sure that our family had what we needed, and my mom was the same way, we still got to do maybe, like I said, different vacations or whatever. But the fact that he was in his job, I like saw such passion. And I think that's literally what I've carried to the next generation and you've carried on. Because there's nothing worse than someone going to a job, I never felt like I was doing a job, but I felt like when I was in my, plenty of years of coaching, whether it was actually coaching a team or whether it was teaching, your return on your investment is just so big. You've affected people's lives. And I think that's what I always see now when I'm like watching your videos or hearing from people about your videos. Like, it's affected whether it's actually changed their life, Yeah, but it has really affected their life. It could be that it was like 30 minutes of enjoyment around the, turning your fire on, putting your, the video up, and whether it's somebody getting ready for a trip or whatever, it's just that enjoyment. So I think that's the same kind of thing, that we did as teachers, I think, coaches. Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that people listening and people watching the films, if there's anything, it doesn't even have to be that they get into fly fishing more, but hopefully they can just see, recognize maybe something that they've always wanted to do, or something they've always wanted to chase after and try to do, and hopefully go for it, or at least make the steps to start figuring out, like set a plan up, make a goal, and then work backwards and figure out what steps need to be made to do it. And at the end of the day, if you fail and you mess up, who cares? You start back over again.
So what? Who cares?
Move on, yeah.
Well, and I think too, a lot of times there's like stereotypical things out there. Well, I can't do that because I'm 40, or I can't do that till I don't have kids, or I'm 60, and I can't do that. And I think some of those stereotypes right away stop people. And I think that's one of the things, like you were saying, you hope that you're getting out there to people that, you can do this, whether it's fishing or anything else. It's just really kind of like an attitude, like kind of put that stereotype away, and you can do whatever you want to do, I mean, maybe that's, again, kind of going back to that question, but I just really think that that's so true. I mean, just because I was coaching all my life doesn't mean I can't do like something else. or or for example, like, my major. I mean, I went to college and played 3 sports and it was great. And then I went, oh shoot, I have to decide on a major, but I kind of feel like I knew, what do you want to do? I want to affect people's lives. I knew that. And so, I was like, okay, so I'm studying sociology, but then I did some of my, different 1 month and 2 month things that you had to do. And I was like, you know what, that's not really where I want to be. But that didn't matter because I learned to go through college. I learned to meet challenges, and I learned to hit deadlines, and I learned to write. I learned to, how to get up in front of people. And I look back at that and it's like, it didn't even matter, what major I would have done, because I look at myself as a coach, and I was a planner, and you have a budget, and you have to market, and you have to get in front of people. All that was there from basically going to college. And I think that's a little bit, some kids kind of getting off track here, but that's sort of where they get kind of wrapped up in. But again, it's like a stereotype. No, I've got to go into business, or I've got to go into management, and that's where I'm, going to make the money or whatever. But it's not as important as really, like, is your job going to be fulfilling? And I think we talked a lot about that in a roundabout way this weekend. What makes, like, our life fun, and like, what do we do? And, what makes it fulfilling? And it's fulfilling for you to be able to share with people experience that you have, that maybe some people might just experience it vicariously through watching it on your video. And you might hit that one person that gets up from that film afterwards and is like, oh my gosh, says to his buddy, let's do this. And then all of a sudden they're on this incredible adventure that they would not have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the other thing. It's great if someone if it's 20, 30 minutes of their day where they just get a disconnect and watch a video. That's great too.
Yeah.
You don't have to go for something crazy or something spectacular, but maybe it's just, you spend an extra 30 minutes every day walking, going outside and walking, or I don't know, something little like that. But start small, get a goal, and just do it. I mean, I'm sure if I asked way back when you were, what was it, your sophomore year? Maybe when you started actually like taking the GoPro, and or maybe it was even earlier than sophomore
that.
Year.
Sophomore year.
I was definitely filming stuff that wasn't fly fishing related, from probably 8th grade.
The water bottle flip and
yeah, freshman year. We were making trick shot videos because Dude Perfect was so big then.
That's right.
So we used to do that a bunch.
So think about it. So way back then, like, did you ever really, like, when did it kind of hit you like, okay, like, I really enjoy taking these videos and then watching them and sharing them with, well, I guess it started when you guys came back and then you'd watch them and laugh about them. But when did it kind of hit you? I have a passion for this. This is something I feel like I could do, because you carried it all the way through college.
Yeah, I feel like I always believed in it. I always was under the mindset of, I'm going to figure this out. Like, this is just what I like to do, and I'm going to figure out how to make it happen.
What do you mean make it happen? Like, so that you could do it as like a job, or just figure out how to film and present it like that way?
I don't know if there was a moment when I just had it. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the thing. Like, it's just, I always believed in it. And throughout college, I think I was, in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, I'm just going to I have 4 years to figure out how to make this into my career, in my job.
Through your college.
Yeah. Going into college, I was like, I'll just do management, business management, whatever. It's basic. It's a business degree, at the very least. But I didn't really know I was even interested in business at that point. I just knew that I liked fishing and I liked to film. And then when I started making a little bit of money with it in college, doing freelance projects, and started to sharpen my skills, and then see that other people were doing it too, like people I was watching on YouTube. Mm-hmm. That's when I think I realized that, oh, this is real. This is a thing I could do. I just have to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I've been grateful to have found that so early. But I also know that some people don't find that until they're in their mid-30s or their 40s even, or later. You might not find that thing. And I might be doing something completely different in 10 years. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I want to like hyper focus in and hone in on this craft that is I'm just drawn to, I guess. and hopefully continue to do it as long as I can.
Yeah, and I noticed this like this weekend too. I think we talked about it. I think, but I saw it like even throughout college. You had your classes, and you were learning from your typical marketing and your photography classes, and you're taking things from that. But I feel like you and I are we're very similar. It's always been for me like I didn't get as much from like actual class. It was more like the experience that you would get. That would be better if you were doing like a project or something. But your whole thing is you never stop learning. Like that's great.
Love to learn.
Oh, you just never stop. And I think I already saw that like in college because you were taking your classes, but then you were following the other people that were in the same field, or other videographers or YouTubers or whatever to learn something. I don't know how to do it, so I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to learn. And I mean, that helped me. That was like, you gave that to us as parents. Well, figure it out. There's Google or there's whatever. You always learn so much from other people. And I remember you were also talking about how, maybe it was in college. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But you were saying you don't want to just watch fishing videos to help you to learn to be creative. You watch so many different types of videos. And now I get it. And even more so this weekend is because you're really watching and learning how they storytell. And I never really got that concept until, probably, as of late, but even more so this weekend, that it's not that I don't have to go watch and go, okay, I'm going to watch all the people that do saltwater fishing and either find a different way to do it or like, oh, I got to be better than them. Like it's a competition. That's not it. It's how deep is the story that what I want to tell and how can I convey what that is? And that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where, even in your book reading, it's such a variety of people that are of authors that help, kind of help you with that storytelling, that it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm just going to watch all the fishing videos. And because I would have thought that from an outsider going, well, you're going to watch this. No, I learned this and this and this. Yes, I might have learned this from school and my classes, but I wanted to know more about maybe the storytelling side of it. So you would watch other people's
It's good to separate yourself from whatever industry or niche kind of thing you're in a little bit, and then take in perspective from other avenues. But what is really funny is I didn't like reading growing up, did I?
No.
I didn't like reading until just about 2 years ago. So tell people, explain what it was like, I guess, to me. Explain to what it was like trying to get me to read early on. Because I know there's always the summer reading. You and I would clash. You're like, you have to do the summer reading book.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do is just be outside and play sports or just be with my friends.
Okay, this is again where I think we are 100% similar. Like, you and I can't just sit still. Like, we're not good at that. And I think part of it is the focus.
Yeah.
You have to read this book and you look at it and a book looks so daunting because it's like this thick. And I remember like Johnny one time, I chose that summer reading because it had the biggest writing in it. And it was like the smallest book, So I think some of it was just that I don't think you understood, and maybe some of those books weren't like that back then. You didn't understand the enjoyment that could come out of reading. And it's tough to sit still and to read a book. It's just, it's a tough thing. Sometimes you run that little, what was that thing called? You'd actually have a book and you were skating around on that.
Ripstick?
No, it wasn't the ripstick, but the other thing that it kind of would move as you leaned one way.
I don't know.
Johnny has one of them. What was that called? Anyway, you just had to be almost mobile while you were, you were reading. But I think back when I was really young, I had to go to all the reading classes. I think it was like first grade, second grade, like they were called like SRA. We had to read all these things for comprehension and things like that. And I don't know if it's because somebody was telling me I had to do it because I wasn't very good at that, or if it was just my mind was racing so much that I was like, this isn't interesting to me. Like, it's okay, I got to read this, and it's okay, I'm going to read this, and I have to answer the six questions. And I was like, can I do that? And then can I go to recess? I think that's more the way I was. And then as I got along later, but got into books that I really enjoyed, I just couldn't stop. But it was just because it was so inspiring. The things I was reading was so inspiring.
Or it interests you.
Yeah, it interests. Yeah. Or you maybe had an interest area and you're like, oh, okay, I want to find out more about that area. I mean, I do that so much now, and it's of course easier with the internet, but hey, I've got some lessons coming up and I just want to get something new to really work on pivoting, pop it up, look on a bunch of YouTube videos, and it's like, oh, wow. Okay. And it just gets you, so excited, which is where you are now with the reading, and educating. And I think there's just so many different ways to educate. Some people are just book people from the start, I guess.
But now there's audiobooks, now there's podcasts, there's YouTube. I mean, I always say YouTube University is where I went to school. I went to App State, but I think I've learned about human psychology through YouTube, just about how people interact with content and how to get people's attention, how to retain people's attention, how to tell a story. Like, why is a story engaging, from a human standpoint? So I feel like when I started out filmmaking, it was just, how do I shoot the best shots, or how do I get a shot that looks like that?
Like more just the technical part of it.
Yeah, to mimic, a type of look that of the films that I was interested in, which is so natural. And that's what people should do, is you should try to mimic and take things from different people that you like or you are inspired by. But then now it's deeper than that. It's the story. Okay. And that's really what the core of it, right? You go to all these external things, the transitions, the flashiness, the color grade, this and that. But at the end of the day, it's all about connection and story. And
yeah. Like if all of that was like perfect, but then the story wasn't there.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't.
But I just remember that always being such a pain in the ass
when
I was younger. I did not want to read. That was the last thing on my list in the summer. And I just dreaded it. But
But why do you think, like if you look back at it now, like how much you enjoy reading now, like what do you think it was back then? Don't you just think it was like, I want to be out there and I want to be moving? And
well, because I think it was books and the things I was learning about were things that I wasn't interested in, right? It was whatever was assigned by the teacher in that class or that summer. I didn't understand the value of it. Whereas now I understand what I like, the things that interest me, and I'm always going to read stuff or listen to a podcast from
choose it
from maybe people that someone that I look up to, right? Or a close friend recommends a book. There's a reason for me to go read it, right? It's like, oh, Jared said this book would be really good to help with my productivity. Great. I take his opinion into account. Mm-hmm. So I think just finding stuff that actually interests me, has been where I've started to have more of an interest to pick up a book and actually spend the time. And then through that, I've also understood or learned the importance of slowing down and stillness, being able to sit down and read a book, like what that does for me. It might not be the same for everyone else, but I really enjoy that, and it does a lot for me and gets me in like a better headspace and going into the day to kind of do that. But
and I think it makes you think too. I think if you're
that too.
If you're reading, you're always thinking, kind of like I said earlier. But you sometimes with social media, you just don't put up a filter. You just take in. I think that's one thing it does. You're actually kind of choosing something. You're making a choice to take it in or consume it or read it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So one of my, I guess, fondest memories growing up was definitely living in Minnesota and going fishing on the dock and with my friends, and you would be the one a lot of the times taking me and my friends fishing, and you just spend the time hanging out reading at the end of the dock so we could be there. And there's a million other things that you could have been doing in that time, but you chose to be there with us and kind of help support that passion. Mm-hmm. So, why did you choose to do that and spend the time when there were so many other things you could have been doing?
I feel like once I knew having kids that I wanted to make that investment in them. And when I saw that you didn't just like it. It's funny. You didn't just you liked football and you liked basketball and you did all your sports. But I just wanted to spend time with you, and it was outside. But I think I really did. I saw that you just had so much fun. So, I mean, if you took like a generic example of a parent, like, oh, if your kid had something that they really liked, wouldn't you go do it? And maybe not everybody would say that because it was a lot of time invested. But I enjoyed you enjoying it and enjoying the process of fishing. And I just was amazed at your patience, especially for just, boys are boys and, they're just like not always like, focused and, the concentration. I was just shocked when you did that. You could do it for hours and hours and hours. But I think I enjoyed it because you enjoyed it, and I wanted to have that experience with you.
Yeah, that's great.
It was fun, minus some of the mosquitoes, but yeah.
Yeah.
Woo!
So I guess, I don't know, one of the concerns I have just with myself is I've just run into, I'm still young, but like at the same time, I've run into situations where I feel like I'm so overworked or I'm working so long that I barely even have time for myself or to go hang out with friends. And it always feels like I have to be doing something, and you probably had friends that were working at the time and out, building their careers, but you just, you were a stay-at-home mom at the time. Obviously a lot to do with Johnny and his upbringing. It's a whole separate conversation, but how did you kind of deal with that and not, get sucked into comparing yourself to other people, but like actually spend the time to be like, I'm just gonna go hang out for 3 hours with them and help support his passion. Like how do you deal with that as a parent?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a choice, and I think, again, for a lack of a better word, investment. I guess I just felt like my parents gave me such an investment of, one, them being interested, them caring, and them being around. Like I remember we would go, down in the cul-de-sac, and you wanted to be a pitcher, and I would get down and catch for hours and hours. And then when it got harder, we'd go up. So we had that backdrop in the back for the ones that I would miss. I just loved always just being around you and being involved and to me, that felt like that was the best mothering that I probably could do. And I know maybe it's the difference between boys and girls. There's kind of a joke about that, but there was like a little video, and it says two boy moms, and they're just sitting and they're, sipping in their cocktails, and then all of a sudden it got quiet and they're like, oh my gosh, and then like run to the other room, and the kids are all fighting, and then they go back to the girl moms, and they're going, gosh, it's kind of quiet, should we go check? And then they go into the other room, open the door, and then the girls are just like playing house. They're like, okay, and they go back to their little drinking. I think because I was very interested in the things that you're doing, and we got involved. Like I was always involved in sports, so we never stopped. But some of my friends that had girls or just weren't that active, like, oh, I'm so bored staying at home. And I never was, because we went from adventure to event. Remember, we would hop in the Burley, and then we'd bike over to here, and we'd go to the park. And I guess I just wanted you guys to always have those experiences. But I also felt like, I think the investment of somebody being there, because all along you learned someone's caring, they're enjoying what you're doing. I think it's part of just at the core, probably being an educator. I always wanted to, share and educate and have experiences. And I wanted to do it with you. I think I don't really think there might've been, maybe a few times, where it's like, oh shoot, I could be working, and then maybe we can make more money to do whatever. But I think I kind of would step back and go, this is so much more important, than money. And it was a little bit different, I think, once, with Johnny, just the fact that we had to, be a little more homebound, and it was just a little bit different because he couldn't go to school. And there's things that we couldn't do. But again, it made me be really creative in what we were doing. And I felt like we were always learning. I felt like I was always teaching. Being a parent, yes, but I think I was always like, teaching or, let's do this. So that I think that I saw that probably as an investment. Maybe didn't know it as much then, but I had learned that through my parents, that by doing that, then down the road, and look at it right now. Look at us. So, here you are at your age, and I don't know how many kids would invite their mom to go on a fishing trip with them and spend, 3 days together, 4 days together. And maybe there are, but it wasn't just the fishing. I don't think that we had, because we had that in common, that you wanted to do that and that I wanted to go along. I think it's because we've established a relationship way back that grew. And of course there's rough roads to the parts of your relationship, but I still think that solid base of a relationship was built way back when I was able to spend good quality time.
Yeah.
I would see some of the parents that, barely saw their kids. And I think that would be that example. Probably the kids would walk in, oh, here's my picture. Remember we talked about that? Like, here's my picture. Oh, great. That's awesome. Versus I think when you don't have that strain of a job, you're able to be, in some ways, I'm glad I had that experience to be a much better parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people that didn't choose to do that, you don't have that to look back. But I remember people telling me, they're like, well, if you think that you maybe want to stay home, like try it, because you're never going to be able to go back to it. If you're like, oh, I never did it. God, I wished I would have, and then being an educator too, I think the earlier years are really impressionable and kind of sets a lot of the tone of, what you can do and your relationship, I think, with your kids. And I mean, I had so much fun. We just did so much, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never sat around. I just don't remember.
Yeah, and it's the same way now. It's so hard for me to just loaf. I can watch movies and I'll turn on Netflix here and there, but I feel like I have to be doing something that feels productive, or like do stuff that makes me feel like I'm productive. And if I'm not, then I start going crazy.
No, I'm just laughing because Dad will say sometimes, like, geez, I can't even watch a movie. You make me so nervous. Like, just because can't sit still or whatever. Yeah, I agree. I'm that same way. Just got to be doing.
Mm-hmm. I think there's maybe something in the culture, or in our culture, that's just doesn't prioritize the right things. And so you have these misconceptions of, what's important to you. And
going back to being like a stay-at-home mom. You mean?
Yeah, and I think it's I've definitely learned that from y'all, to figure out what your priorities are and what's actually important to you, versus what you might think should be important based on culture and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't, 100% know everything. And I also have recognized that parenting, I realized that you guys were just trying to figure it out. It's not like you guys had it figured out.
Yeah.
So when I look back and I'm like, oh, I didn't like how they did that, or I wish my parents did whatever, these other parents did. I just realize that, oh, this is their first go at it.
Yeah.
They didn't
darn
have
that second
training.
kid, because whatever the first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because I know I've been like in my basketball, either as organizations or even just like parents, athletic directors, things like that. It's interesting because one of the comments they'll say, they're like, wow, you have an amazing amount of patience. And so I heard that, I've heard it a lot, and I kind of was like, yeah, I wonder where, and I think a lot of that was all from being a stay-at-home mom, and really, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And then especially with some of the things with Johnny, like, you had to be, ultra patient and just, calm. And I think that those were things I definitely took into my basketball career, because it was stated to me, but I think I also felt that same way. I was able to be, patient, and I think I learned a lot, just because even I didn't go the educational route, but I taught and I coached, but I never had any of that background. And sometimes people were shocked that I didn't. They're like, how? But now in us talking, I'm thinking back going, well, that's how it is. Like, you and Johnny were completely different learners. You learn completely different ways. Kind of like you are now. Let's all in. Let's just do it. Yeah, we're gonna go. Boom, grab the coat and let's go. Johnny, what are we gonna do? Where are we going? I'm gonna, pack the bag, or let's go golf. Okay, Scotty you'd probably step up and just like swing it. And, whoa, it didn't go right, and go harder, right? Johnny would be over there like thinking about the actual hit, and you'd have to show him, and then he'd have to like turn it around because you're doing it that way. And I think I learned a lot of that helped me not only just as a person being patient, or being able to see that there's many different ways people can learn and express themselves, but also just even in career, I think it helped me a lot. Do people, there could be a player that was real visual. There might be someone else that, can hear it and learn it right away.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that time though. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. No, I did.
And it was incredible, because I remember saying to somebody one time, and it was not even that long ago, that you said, I was like out of the blue. I don't even know what we were talking about. And you said, I'm so appreciative of the fact that you got to stay at home with us. And I was kind of like, wow, I didn't know you appreciated it that much, but it meant a lot. And you had said that. I thought, well, for him to be able to say that, that really means that it did affect you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I don't remember what the situation was, but.
Yeah, no, I think also having some separation from, I was living here, right? Like in y'all's space the whole time not the whole time, but after college for a year or so. And so it's been nice to be separated and be in Salt Lake. And I actually reflect more, I feel like, on that, because you're not in it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the reason I do this is because my mom and dad did this, or they taught me this a certain way, or because they do this kind of thing, I can see it in myself.
Yeah, you may not have formulated that, like, oh, A plus B is C, and get it that way.
Kind of to like live on my own and figure out my problems and figuring out, I should say.
Yeah.
You don't have to figure out.
Or what, who is me? Yeah. And what am I going to do? And how am I actually going to do it? Because, there's not that every kid has to be like their parents, but they're probably going to take different tendencies we talked about, from some we like and some we don't like, from,
Yeah, and you just have to, you're going to take stuff from your parents either way. So you have to lean into those. I'm trying to lean into those more, for being more like proud of, oh, this is just who I am, instead of trying to, I don't know, you're
like, you don't like that you're like
about
that.
It. Yeah, so you try to change, but that's just never the right way to do it.
Or even as a parent now, looking back and going, oh, I remember I'm never going to do what my mom does. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm my mom or something, that I think that happens so much. It'll be fun, like when you're a parent, then for you to go, oh my gosh, I said I was never going to do that. Or
was there ever anything when I was growing up that I was getting into that you were just like, no, absolutely not. This is not for you. And you just knew it was just like not the right route for me.
High school, you mean? We won't talk about high school. Gosh, that is trying to think of what shocked me, because there was something that I was like, well, that was more of late, like, SpaceX and all that. I was kind of like, where did that come from? That was interesting. But growing up, literally there was like a basketball in your crib, like a stuffed crib. But maybe that was more brainwashing, because I think maybe I put that in there. But no, you always seemed creative too. Like even at like a younger age, there's just things that and Johnny's the same, taking, maybe the artistic side, from my mom. Like she would have loved to have seen how creative you guys are. Like, didn't you feel creative from a younger age?
I feel like I really liked building things, like making things.
Yeah.
Back in Minnesota with my friends, would be making, jumps in the winter for sledding, or just used to make, fishing poles out of sticks, and, we'd buy stuff from Home Depot. But yeah, I feel like I was always interested in making stuff. Like I would love the project of something not existing, and then having an idea, being like, oh, what if we did this? And then we make it.
Isn't that wild to think about that now?
Yeah,
to think of how that's what's crazy. So carried through.
Yeah, and I feel like as a parent, you have to try to recognize those things early on and really support that. Even if it wasn't me making films early on, it was just me making stuff. Just support that, and eventually you'll figure out.
Yeah.
Where, because I think for the longest time, I always wanted to make Johnny be a certain way, or I wanted him to think and do the things that I like to do, instead of supporting that he's different from me and he might be interested in other things, and supporting
what was the shift in your mind that made you do that though? Like, maybe there wasn't a point.
There's still times when I'm like that, but I definitely think we clashed as kids because of that. I was really into sports, and he was really into action figures and really into superheroes and all that, and he wasn't so much into sports. And you wanted him to be, and I wanted him to be, but instead of forcing it upon him, because that just created conflict, I think once we got to college and we were able to have some space and become friends, we actually didn't really become friends until college, I think. Yeah. Then I was like, oh, I get it. I'm different than he is. He's not gonna. He's just at a different pace, and he's into different things, and so I have to be okay with that. and not try to force him to do anything.
I wonder if it's like maturity, or if it's also even more like, and maybe this goes under maturity, but like, I'm just kind of comfortable with what I do. And you really deep down, you just wanted him to do it with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it was like, boom, a switch just flips. And it's like, gosh, I really wanted him to do it with me. But you know what? I just really doesn't have to be what the thing is. I want to do things with him.
With him. Yeah.
And I think it was really hard early on, just because remember, like, you're like, well, everybody else's brothers were doing this and that. And just because some of Johnny's medical issues, it was.
You want to give a quick 20-second synopsis of Johnny? We don't have to go all the way into it, but just his upbringing.
Yeah, just a quick upbringing is he was born 3 months early. And so because when you're born 3 months early, there was like a lot of limitations, and he had a lot of medical issues, basically, where he, we were kind of much more confined to the house, and it took a lot more of my attention. I think that was a tough time for you, Scotty, because we couldn't, sometimes, for example, go outside because he was hooked up to machines to help him breathe and things like that. And then his learning and his processing was very, very different. He wasn't, as outgoing, and couldn't go and make friends and do things like that because he had to do a lot more just being at home. And it actually ended up kind of being a little more into his personality, actually. I mean, he was so into action figures. And remember, he'd have all the capes and everything on, and then sometimes, upstairs he'd be fighting, and I'm like, you okay up there, Johnny? And he'd be like, oh yeah, Mom, I just got that guy and, killed him. And that wasn't an interest to you. But if you think about it, probably what the fishing did to you, I'm going to fish and I'm going to fish and I'm going to catch a fish. Oh my gosh, I like this. He's acting like the superhero because he's literally breaking through all these things that, people are like, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, or limiting to do that. So how cool that in his mind he had that same type of thing where he had a creative mind that kept him going, like you liked to build. His creative mind kept him thinking that he had confidence. He was this superhero.
Mm-hmm.
But it did. I'm sure it affected you guys in your relationship, especially early on when I had so much focus on what he was doing. That was tough.
And I also wonder, because of that, if some of my just like independence to just be like, all right, I'm just going to figure this out. If some of that stems from those early years of Johnny needing so much attention because of medically and just for where he was at, that I kind of had to just be on my own a lot of times and just figure stuff out. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of correlation there, but
or even the fact that your mom's kind of independent.
Yeah, that too.
No, I agree.
Stubborn maybe is a great word to put it for both of us.
I agree. No, I agree. That's probably both. Like, again, isn't that amazing to see the things that affect so early on, how they really, kind of like we talked about with the staying at home and being around you guys. It is amazing how things early on really affect, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I think one turning point, and this is something fun for you with Wildfly, but one turning point was the first time you had ever not made a team that you tried out for. Remember that? So your junior year, and we moved here your 8th grade year, so you'd been fishing 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and you just hadn't really grown. The coach loved you, but he's like, oh, we just can't. And you had to be on varsity as a junior, and you just didn't make it. And I just remember as a parent, of course, you're devastated. Your child doesn't do that. And you kind of feel like that you're locked in just that moment. But when I go back and look at it, and even then, very soon after, you were like, oh my gosh, I can go fish all winter long. And the thing that
ski.
I
hadn't been able to ski until then.
You had been like you kind of said, starting the wild, you've been starting the, videoing and just being super interested in all these little trips. And it was like, oh shoot, we don't have basketball. And the other cousins didn't have it. So you guys really go take that quick trip. But this year, I mean, I'm sure it affected you.
Keep going. That
it was hard that you didn't make the team. But I think it was so neat that because you didn't, you were able to go much more full force into trying the videoing and all that artistic area. And then you pop back in your senior year and, were able to do both. I mean, what a great experience that was. Like, you'd think it would be something that would, like, oh, shoot, be such a dead end thing. And it ended up turning into just like, for lack of a better word, just another little river that went this way instead of like thinking I'm going to go on this mainstream. I just kind of went off on that little tangent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was so in the basketball for my whole life. That was my life until, college essentially. And
that's so true.
I couldn't imagine, and obviously the cousins, I always looked up to them, and they played varsity every year or played basketball throughout high school.
Oh, yeah.
And I had friends that were on the team, and so I just couldn't imagine a world where I didn't make the team. I was like, this is just what I do. And then I didn't make the team junior year. I was like, what the heck? What do I do? It crushed me, I think, at first. But it is one of those situations, I think, where I did get time to go fish. I did get time to go ski, explore some more of myself that wasn't so tied to this identity as a basketball player.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely was a year where I started to do more with wildfly, and I started to save up some money, and I remember eventually getting a camera by my senior year, and so just had more free time to do that.
Yeah.
Which ultimately is what I wanted to be doing. I don't know. It's just funny how sports were so part of my life up until then, and then now I'm so out of touch with sports. I still love them.
You're doing different sports, yeah.
Different sports.
I think it's more like the team sports. But if you go back to, and then maybe that's being as a coach too, but go back to you as a player experience it all. Look at the things that you did in that sport and the dedication and the motivation and the focus and all that you had to do for that. It's like, again, that has trained you to do what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That gave you those experiences. That gave you, confidence in yourself. I'm a shorter player, but I'm going to be quicker. I'm going to be, shoot further outside. I mean, all those things. Look at that. You just made adjustments to like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to be 6 feet tall. My parents can't give me that.
Yeah.
And until college, weird. I'm going to grow in college. But they can't give me that. So you, again, worked around it. Like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out what I can do. I'm going to work harder at being, a better ball handler.
Yeah.
So those things are all exactly what you're doing in your job right now. You hit those little roadblocks where you don't make the team or, somebody's taller. I mean, think about the parallels there. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, recognizing your limitations. And because I still have a lot of limitations. I still have a lot of things I'm not great at. Like, for example, I mean, you're doing the fulfillment and the emails and keeping track of inventory and supplies, and that just wouldn't work well with my brain. And it wouldn't help me do the thing that I want to really be doing. But that is more your skill set as like the fulfilling, the organizing and everything. And so it's the same thing. And also with business, in sales, like Adam helps with sales. He does our sales. So I know that he's better at that and my time's better spent elsewhere. So yeah, it's different in a way, but it's still recognizing the limitations and then just like leaning into the things that I know are my skills.
We should kind of go back a little bit to like a little over a year ago. Actually, it was probably a little over a year ago. Remember, and I was coaching, teaching, doing an AAU team and everything. And I don't remember exactly how you said it, but just to throw out the idea of me actually doing this, like this would really help. You have these skills, and I forgot how you said something like, and you're such a good I look up to you, however, whatever. Can you kind of say it in a better way when you just said, I see how you work and I would love to have that be part of you. I don't know. You said it so much better. How you presented it to me. Yeah. And I kind of was like, oh, like this is awesome. Like I would love to do this.
I seriously don't remember how it came about and I don't remember what I said, but I know that when we moved down here for the first couple of years, you were working for Uncle James in the warehouse doing a lot of the managerial fulfillment. So you had seen the stages from, you had been in the
trenches,
aisles, picking, right? Packaging, managing, customization. Like you did all of the things that I was trying to do with Wildfly, with the merch side of the business and the apparel. And so I felt like it was a perfect fit that you could just start helping me out because you just already knew how to do it. And so I think around the holidays, you started helping me.
It's like 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Like 2020, I think, just started helping me with that. And then maybe by the spring of 2021 or something, I think I realized I can't do this myself. And so you were just helping like after work. And then it got to a point where we were getting enough orders to keep busy. And then I was like, oh, maybe you could handle email. So we made a separate email, and then you were handling that. And because I was getting all the emails up to that point. I literally, if you think about it, in college, when I first started making merch, I would ship out everything from my dorm room or from my apartment room.
Oh, that's right.
I would ship out stickers. I would have to write down the entire address on an envelope.
You had to go buy just like the little envelope.
Yeah. And then I'd go buy them at the library store or whatever at school. And I'd write down literally with pen the person's address and then go bring it to the post office. And I was spending so much on postage for t-shirts and stuff because I would bring it to the post office and they'd charge you way more.
Oh my God.
And so I knew that there was a better, more efficient way to do it, and you kind of stepped into that role.
Yeah, and then Johnny and I did that first, I don't know, was it like 2020 maybe? He came and we did the Christmas rush that we had. And
that, merch isn't ultimately, and apparel isn't the thing that is like what Wildfly is, but it's a great way for our audience and our community to represent
and connect
with Wildfly and what we represent. But also it has been a way for us to support the films that I want to make and be able to grow that. And so that's been very cool for you to step in. But what was it like in your eyes, where it's still early on? I was obviously not going to be able to pay you a salary like you were getting at school with your teaching job and your coaching job. But what was that feeling for you when you took the step to finally say, you know what, I'm not really happy here, I'm done, I'm going to move and start helping Scotty full time, we're going to figure this out?
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a step back. I remember before when I was still working, I was, doing my teaching, coaching job. And I remember we were doing the fulfillment, like Johnny and I, but mostly I think it ended up being myself. And I think my whole thing as, my whole entire career in coaching has been about building. And I think that's what just got me so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, he used to do this like in his dorm room. And then there was a little bit, and then we got more, and then we got more. And I was like, okay, now I've had experience. I actually do have the skills to do this, and I'm organized, and I enjoy doing all that. I didn't like doing kind of the same thing every single day. And so then when it got to be, I think it was last spring, when you kind of brought that up, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm a builder. I really want to be on board on this and help build. And like you were saying, you can't do, and I knew this, that you wouldn't be able to do some of the things you want to do from the creative end if you had to do what I was doing, because it was growing and we knew that just couldn't happen. And so I was all on board for that. That was great. And then it was crazy, because then, I think the craziest was kind of like you and I talked about it. And then I was like, oh yeah, Dan, by the way,
here's an idea
that I'm kind of decided I'm already going to do. Yeah. That, Scotty asked if I could, come on board and, just really be the organizer and run the operations, which I think has just been able to, well, one, it's alleviated so much for you, which makes me feel good because you can do what you love. And that's what I always did through all my career. Do what I love. And then I think secondly, there is just so many little details that are there. And I think because we're able to, have me be in that role where I can kind of do all the little bits and pieces, it kind of helps it all just stay together. And there's just such good, the word is fulfillment, that's what you're doing. But really, it's so fulfilling to know that people are so excited, to get their gear, and that we can get it to them in reasonable time. And it looks so nice when it arrives and things like that, that we really care about it. And, then it was super fun because we hit Christmas, and that was great. And then at one point, you remember you walked through, I think you were like home for Christmas or something, and Johnny and I were working out here, and he's printing and I'm packaging, and you just said, isn't that weird? I did not do one single pack. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You were in here and you said, I don't think I touched a single package.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of a turning point, because it was like, okay, this is great, because it's literally taking this that you're not even thinking about. You just have trust and know that it's going to It's going to get done. Definitely, you know, a learning curve for parts of it. A lot of the computer things, you know, just working with the different softwares and things like that. That was a learning curve. But I'm a lot like you. Like I wanted that. I wanted to change. I wanted something different where I could learn. And you've taught me so much. Okay, Mom, you can't figure it out. There's Google. Or, you know, instead of just telling me, no, I mean,
newsflash.
It's a little bit, it's kind of our generation, you know, like, wait, what? We would just, you know, call or talk about it.
Or read.
I think I'm dating myself, but yeah, or read. But, I mean, that's been so good too, just doing that. And then just a fact kind of going full circle back to, you know, being a catcher for you, pitching in the cul-de-sac. How fun that he would ask me to do that, you know, and that I would get to work with him on something that he's so passionate about, to be able to support that, just like I would be, you know, catching your pitches, you know, it's complete full circle.
Yeah.
And,
that was really cool to think about, like a little thing like that, because that meant so much to me at the time, to be able to just have you catch when I was trying to pitch, you know, like a little thing like
kind
that.
of exactly what we're doing now.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah. But I remember there's a point when you were just didn't like the work environment and like the day to day of where you were at. And I was just like, just leave. Like there's plenty of other opportunities that you can find. You'll figure it out. But you like clung to it for so long, and then finally, what was that moment when
it's like a snap. It was so interesting, and I don't think it was like I didn't like it, but I think much like you and I need to be challenged. And I think when something gets like super comfortable, I'm like, oh, it was so easy kind of. And I was like, okay, you know, I mean, I'm a passionate teacher, and I like, you know, teaching the PE classes, and I love the coaching. And of course, every single team every year is going to be so different. But there was just something that was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this just isn't challenging me enough, I think. And I was just really ready kind of for, you know, like a new adventure, I think. And it was also a little more kind of, we talk a little bit, it was sort of a little more in the box. You know, you have to do this, and then I have a class at 8 and I have a class at 10, you know. But it's such a variety. Like I really like the variety of it, you know. I have 2 dogs, take them out on walks and then go for a run, and just have a variety of things that I do during the day instead of just one thing. Like, I don't know, I really was excited about that. I really was looking forward to that. And I did definitely want a new challenge, because I don't really like kind of getting stagnant.
Yeah.
You know, and anything.
No, I don't either.
That was a great question. Yeah. But that is funny to see how it goes full circle.
Yeah. Well, what are you most excited about with your role going forward? And like, what do you envision and want that to grow into? Like how to enhance your role or grow into it?
Yeah. I think with the fulfillment, like we're already seeing this too, when we get busy, just being able to be more managerial on it and get some others that are in here helping us actually do the packing, but just organizing all that's been really fun. And I think overall for the company that I'll be doing that moving forward, I can definitely see that to help you not necessarily do more things, but help you do what you do better by putting me more doing some of the managerial roles. You know, much more of the phone calls and the setups of different things, and, you know, like working with our vendors and our just from the other side of the order. It was more you were completely doing all of it, you know, like the design, working with your designer, then you set it up. Then it was like, oh, okay, hey, you're going to get 2 boxes next week, you know. And now we've been a lot more, you know, we're going to plan it out a lot better. And okay, they're going to be in 2 months, you're going to get this. And now I think it's going to be even beyond that. I think it's going to be that much better. Now we're going to get it all out and ready and organized sooner. But again, I think it's because I'll be able to take off, not work that you can't do, but work that makes what you do love to do better and give you more, and maybe not even necessarily more time on it. I think one of the things I've noticed from like our Monday calls with like, you know, Jared and everything, it's not necessarily just taking it away. I think what it's doing, it's enabling you to have a better focus at what you're doing, which is tough. And you know, like you're in there and you're editing, but then you've got, oh my gosh, okay, now I got to go call and do this. I got to take, now we've got the design thing. So that then all of a sudden that focus, and I've seen it, and I'm really glad you had those 6-9 months or whatever it was here, where I was working over here and you were actually working, so that I got to see what that was like, the intensity of it, or maybe not intensity, but I guess like focus and everything that needs. And now that experience there of seeing that and being a part of it makes me understand how much more important my role is, because you just can't be interrupted like that. It kind of throws your day off a little bit.
You work so hard to get into that so to say flow state, or into that focus point of working on a film and editing or whatever it is, that when you have a distraction that pulls you away, it's like all that work to get into that zone gets thrown out the window. And so right now I'm trying to just shed those things that are taking away from that focus, and not in a bad way, but like shed them from my responsibility. Like I shouldn't be ordering, I shouldn't be the one deciding on quantities for smalls, mediums, larges, and I've been doing that up to this point, and it's just been like so dumb. And so I think, not dumb, but it's a learning pains.
Yeah. Growing
pains. But I think I bit off more than I can chew this year with just being optimistic, and this is who I am. Like, oh yeah, we'll do it. We'll figure it out.
Well, you traveled a ton.
Traveled a lot, but with the videos, and then trying to squeeze in a certain amount of merch drops. Our merch drop that happened with the Sailboat Diaries, that was supposed to be early June. That was the plan that we had set in place, but didn't really execute that plan, right? And so I think what you guys will notice this year is we aren't going to be releasing any big line for the fall or for the winter, just as a way for me to catch up on the projects, and then us refine our process, so then when we do decide to do a merch drop again, we have systems in place and we have a plan that we can actually execute it, instead of just like I think that was the best thing for me, is to say, you know what, we have to cancel the fall merch drop, right? Because the priority right now is to getting all these films done that I've already put together, and which is a hard thing for me, because I know also a lot of this is now supporting you and supporting paying for a mortgage, supporting paying for other things. And so that was really hard for me, but I think that's ultimately the best step. It's almost like taking a step backwards so we can take two steps forward. And I think that's going to help us a lot. We're still going to have gear for the holidays, but let's just let's sell all the stuff that we already have, which is great gear, and then just be able to crush it better the next time,
Yeah, I was just going to say something. When you were talking, it made me think of something. Oh, yeah, just about how, sometimes it's really hard. Like, okay, I was thinking my example was, okay, I've been a head coach for most of my career. And then I decided, it'd be really fun to go, and I got the opportunity to coach in the Big Ten, right, as an assistant, which is great. And I learned a lot of things there. But then when I went back to the head coaching, it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of the reason I like this, is the whole control thing. I have control over the entire program. Like, I set the tone for my program, and I, do this and that. And we talked a little bit about that this weekend. I think some of the things that are so hard, and I'm sure with any of the creatives, it's hard to let go of some of that control, because you're like, well, no, that's kind of what it is. That's the Wildfly is sort of me and my brain and kind of what's going on. And that's what you've said, that you've realized as you've been able to let go of those things, you don't lose the creative side that you are doing. And going way back to the beginning of the podcast, it may not be perfect having somebody else do it, but perfect is not maybe necessarily what we're aiming for. And if you are able to have other people help you do the things that they can do well and eliminate things for you, like you said, it's sometimes just that control. I just gotta let go of it. Well, for a while, maybe the certain number did matter, because in the bank, there was only a certain amount of money that was there to support the gear that we had to sell or wanted to sell, or, and it is different. So I think that's probably been one of your biggest moves for, like for me being able to come on and take a lot of those things away from you, that you're able to still have the control of what you're, of what you're doing and where you're going, but slowly realize, somebody else can can do this. And the fact that you know that we're similar and you can trust me doing it, that probably helps out as well, to make that maybe process move on a little faster maybe.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a moment when you were hesitant about what I was doing with Wildfly? Or like maybe we're like, you know what, Scotty, maybe you should try something else. Or like,
what's wild? I never was. I think Dad did a little bit, it's weird. I never did, because I was like, okay, if he's following something he's passionate about, and I saw the way you did it, I was like, you know what? He's going to figure this out. I didn't. I never did.
That's cool.
Did you ever, how about you with the support from us? Did you ever feel like that?
No, again, like you said, not throwing Dad under the bus, but I think Dad was a little more realistic with, hey, like, are you
able to pay the bills?
Are you able to pay the bills? Are you able to keep the lights on? Which was good, and it was good to have that. But I just felt like I always got the support that I needed at the time, or even little things like me showing you when I was living here, and I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this scene? And I would just play it, and you're not in the edit the whole time, so you're like, oh,
right.
That's great. I'm like, really? I didn't think it was that good, because I'd watched it a million times. But
that was a really fun time, though. Like you said, like those 9 months where I was learning, because I'd never really been around seeing what you actually did do. And then when you'd bring me in and, have ideas or listen to this for the voiceover or what about this, like that. Yeah, that was really.
But I off that, I also think you always gave me the space that I needed to do this. You gave me enough space to learn and make mistakes, but also just be there of like, oh, this is great, keep doing this. Or again, with the fishing thing when I was younger, just being a supportive force to help me continue doing that thing.
Well, yeah, and I think too, if you think back kind of when you were in college, I think one of the reasons that I kind of clicked to me, like, I think he's gonna do this and it doesn't matter. You never really worried about the other, maybe you never showed it to us and never seemed like it, that you worried about the other people. Like, oh, okay, this person's gonna go off and be a banker and they're gonna make X amount of money. I think you were more like, well, I hope they're happy because I'm happy. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Like, I felt like that, which is kind of similar to when we talked earlier. And my parents were the same way. They chose to be educators. So we had to choose a certain type house and we chose certain type vacations. I think I kind of thought in that way, kind of just like going back that, okay, if he chooses that and that's what he's going to do, maybe at first he has to choose just more wisely on certain things that he does. And you did that for a while, came back and invested in your business by coming back and, and staying here for a while before moving out to Salt Lake. And so that's why I think I felt real confident that you were going to do it. And, if you were, someone's like, oh, okay, yeah, really, gosh, I got to have that new car and I got to have this and I got to have that. That would have put so many more constraints. And I think I would have probably had some little questionable times, maybe like, I'm not sure. But you just didn't have that. You have the drive and everything, and it was there.
Yeah, I'm trying to live within my means. And again, being, like we said earlier, being out west and now really being fully immersed in the things that I like to do. They're not cheap by any means. Like, buying a mountain bike is not cheap. Buying skis, buying a ski pass is not cheap. But once you do have those things, it's like you're investing in them over time. And now I finally, after 4 or 5 years of buying ski gear, I finally have all the gear I need. So all I have to do is get a pass, and then it's gas.
Yeah.
From there and back, and whatever I buy at the resort. But but for the most part, like, that's the thing that is that I want to do, and it's making me happy. So I'm going to continue to invest in those things, whereas I might not need 3 pairs of shoes.
So that's kind of another reason I think that I felt so much like, oh, he's going to make this work, and I had confidence.
Yeah.
You didn't need material things. The only things that you, so to speak, needed was an upgraded camera or whatever. But then it was great because you would like sell the other one and go like, hey, somebody else can start doing what I did with this camera. And so you were very creative, and that was good. So I think that was another thing. You didn't need a lot of things.
There's definitely a moment there, and it still lingers every once in a while, but I think specifically when I was living here and just trying to get it figured out, where, I did see my other friends going out and making $70,000, $60,000 a year right out of college, and just being like, man, what am I doing? Like, I'm just sitting here behind my computer by myself. Like, I'm not making that kind of money.
Yeah.
What am I, is this the right move? Should I have done what they're doing? But then again, it goes back to really just like following my gut. I've always done that, I think, and I'll continue to do that. And I think if I follow my gut and something messes up and it doesn't turn out the right way, I at least learn something from it and can make the decision better, or make a better decision the next time.
Well, to be honest, I think there's so many people on one, I know I read it in comments and, get it in emails, but I think there's so many people that wish they could do what you did. Like, and not only just the vacations, kind of, not really vacations, but I'll say the trips. Not only just that they can do all the trips and that's considered your job, but I really think in some ways, a lot of people are saying, I wish that I had the confidence or the ability to just like to try it, like try something. I wish I could do what you're doing, like maybe take a gamble that this may work or it may not work. That I just think a lot of people probably think that about you and Wildfly, whether they're watching or not. Like, wow, okay, so
it's all been documented. So
yeah, there you go.
Can't add from that. Another question I had was, what is the biggest challenge that you have overcome in your life, or a challenge that you can think of that you were like really proud of overcoming afterwards?
I would say probably the birth of Johnny and being able to handle that situation. Like you said, it was kind of hard to say in 30 seconds, but it was extremely challenging to have a child that had special needs that is in the hospital and a 2-year-old at home that was as busy as you were.
And he's good now, by the way.
Yeah,
he's killing
good.
it.
He's killing it.
He's about to graduate college, which is wild.
But that's crazy. I do think that's because there was, I kind of got a little dark during part of that period in there and was ready to think that I probably couldn't handle all of that. And I think, and then the good thing is I, pretty much see that every day because I see it in, like you said, where Johnny is.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
What do you wish you made more time for in your life?
As in, like, now moving forward or, like, way back?
Yeah, like, what right now do you wish you made more time to do?
Probably made more time to go out and be with friends. And then I also think to go do things. Just, like, go make that choice like we were talking about this weekend. Just, like, go do it. There's something you want to go do. Let's just go up for the weekend and go find a hike, pick a hike, do the hike and do it instead of going, oh, should we have this to do and not do it? I think that's definitely something that, and me, I would love to do anything active and anything outside.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
You definitely done a good job being active, and I've taken that into my life, but it is, I'm sure, very easy too when you have a family and you have dogs here, that you're taking care of, to get so locked into that world that sometimes you maybe forget to expand and go out, make time for friends and whatnot.
Yeah, I think I never had, or still don't, kind of have that, like, I wish I kind of thing where I wish I would have done that. I wish I would. I don't think I ever kind of do that thing they talk about where if you're going to look in your, if you're looking in your car mirror and you look outside and you're looking back, like everything back there, it's really, really little, instead of like looking forward and your whole windshield is like this huge thing ahead of you. I think that's definitely always been my view, is to have that view, looking forward. I think right now I just would be ready for just so much more adventure. Again, I like challenges, and I've done the run 5 marathons and all that's fun, and you're doing that. I've been really interested in yoga, done a lot more of that. That's been challenging. And now again with 2 dogs, it's been super fun to make sure they get exercise and walk my 5 to 6 miles a day, doing that. But I don't think I look back and go, I wish I would have done this career. I wish I would have done, that career. Like, I feel like I'm really happy with what I did do. But like now, really excited to see where this goes. Have some fun dreams of where it can be, and even where we could live. To make it fun.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, one of the, I think, early maybe things that helped me get into documenting and filmmaking was you taking photos of us, creating these scrapbooks and having all these memories. Now we have all these books over there to kind of look back on and have like all these amazing memories. And that was a really cool thing for me. So I did kind of make you something that I wanted to give you.
No way.
I didn't really get to wrap it, but
I love your wrapping.
I was going to give it to you down in the coast, but we didn't do the podcast then.
No way. Look at this. And I made these jackets, by the way. Do you know that?
No, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh. When you wrote in it. Oh my gosh.
Just a collection of
these
photos.
Are great. Photos from fishing and
I know it's nothing like your scrapbooks, but
that's the whole thing. This is amazing. Thank you, and I'll read the backup because I probably would start crying just looking at it. But it's funny because that was one of the things, like we talked about our perfection. I was creative memories and was like a leader and did that as a business even for 10 years. I was able to capture all that and see the effects of it on our family. But I remember always wanting to be so perfect on those. And it was like, done is better than perfect. And that was the thing we always used to say, like you were saying with your videos earlier, done is better than perfect. It's getting the memories there so you can relive them and look at them. Even if you just put like you said, it makes nothing like it. I think the important thing is this actual picture. It doesn't have stickers, but it's got picture and then it's got words on it that kind of put back. Oh, this is a treasure. This is amazing.
I knew that
Vegetables.
I knew because of my perfectionism, if I would have, like, I could have made that, I could have gone down a rabbit hole with like trying to make it perfect, but I intentionally made it really simple and just the photos and
oh my gosh,
the words.
Which does make it perfect because it's really the gift of what it is. It's the gift of memories. That's amazing.
So there's some cool stuff you can look through in there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
This weekend, I mean, it's been so crazy not even knowing I was going to have this whole trip to. It feels like almost feels unreal that you came that early and took the time out. Like, it makes me feel really special that you.
Well, I'm glad
that you did all that.
I had a great time, and I hope we can do many more, trips like that going forward.
Me too.
Last question I was going to ask you was, if there, what have you always wanted to ask me? Like, has there been something that you've always wanted to ask me about?
I guess one area, and this could be a complete vulnerable thing, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I just remember it was super hard as a parent when you physically didn't grow and you're in a sport of basketball where like big is everything, and it made it so tough. I think we've talked a little bit about that, but what helped you to get over that experience? 'Cause I remember it was always hard because you were always the shortest guy on the team and everybody accepted you. And I remember as a parent it was hard sometimes, like, oh, girls don't take me serious. And, I'm just like a kid just because you matured a little bit later than others. I know that was a challenge, but I think sometimes I used to think about that and go like, wow, he dealt with that for so many years where you were confident in a lot of ways in the things that you did. But I kind of felt like there wasn't anything that I could really do. Plus you being male, it's even more different. I guess that would be just one, like, what was it that was able to like pull you through that to get over that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because then, then you go on to college. Here you are, a basketball player, and then you go on to college, and like, who grows 2 inches in college? Like, where were those 2 inches when I needed them?
I know.
Back in, I mean, you grew, I remember, because your back was hurting. And
Yeah, very much a late bloomer, though. I was always the
But I remember that really being really affecting you. Like your mentality, like affecting. And I felt like, gosh, I don't know how to get in there. I don't know how to, help with that as a parent. Or I guess that would be the only question I've always kind of gone like, how? Because you came out of that with flying colors.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say flying colors, but it definitely had some wounds coming out of that.
Well, no, I think you had that, but I guess you had the wounds, but you just came out.
But I think it's made me like who I am, and definitely stronger because of that experience.
And maybe this helps. I know here's just one. There was one just brief story. Was just I remember when we were when Johnny was in the NICU and they bring the parents in there and they help the parents and they counsel you. And I remember one of the things that has stuck with me from one of the counseling sessions is they said, people aren't going to understand what you're doing. They're like, you're never going to get over it. Don't have people tell you you're going to get over it. You're going to get through it. And I just felt like this weight was just like lifted off my shoulders because I don't think they didn't understand it. Nobody could understand, that you have your baby 3 months early. You're barely in maternity clothes. You're in there and then you come home and you can't go out or people can't come in your house. And, you're like, hey, everybody has a brand new baby and you're going, and you're out and you're, sharing your baby. And for 3 months, you couldn't even bring him home. Like, I remember all that and going, people just don't get it. They don't understand it. And I don't know if that helps, if it's that same similar thing, but gosh, you're not going to get over it, but you're going to get through it. I just felt like somebody gave me like a free pass to like,
I think something that maybe did help me, and this wasn't directly related to like going out there and giving it my all with basketball, and even though I was the shortest guy, but I think this more so started in high school when I started finding videos and creating and making these films. It was like this thing that I could do where it didn't really matter my size, it didn't matter who, it didn't matter what my friends were doing. Like it was almost like my own little world that I was living in, that I was just making these videos. And
a piece. You didn't have to fit that piece into that puzzle.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I feel like that I'd always, even if I had a tough day at school or if I had a tough day at practice or a game I didn't play because I just didn't play, I knew I always had this. Right. And I always had fly fishing, and I always had my family and my cousins. Like they were obviously really impactful. And people who have followed from the start. I probably sound like a broken record, but
No, you
that's,
probably can't. I don't think you probably can say that enough.
Yeah. So I think always knowing in the back of my head, like it's going to be okay. I have these people around me who are really supportive, and I have this thing that I can, go and create.
Wow.
I do wish I knew earlier on, like, looking back now, I wish I knew in high school that this is just one step in the road. This isn't your life.
The sports, you mean, or the
just high school? I think there's so much you get in your own head, and you think like this is your life, this is your world forever, and these are my people forever. But I went to school, graduated from a school of 600 in my class, 600 people. I probably keep up with 3 of them from high school. Right. And that's not to say that I had bad friends in high school. I just have found a different community of people. And so there is a different community of people out there. If you're not in the right place, or you're not in a stage where you feel like you're thriving. So I think that was nice going to college and being around different group of people. And then now going into Salt Lake and really feeling like I found my type of people.
And community. I think like you're saying, I think that's so true.
I think I wish I could recognize that earlier, that it's okay if this one girl doesn't like you. There's going to be plenty more opportunities down the road. Like, you should just go for it. And I'm still working through that.
Well, even like fitting in, I think that was the one thing probably, like in high school, you were on the basketball team. Yeah. And that was like a mini community, you were a part of that. But I think if you do think about that whole, it's so prevalent in high school, no matter what year it is, when I went to school or you went to school, whatever, the whole fitting in. And I think that's, like you were just saying, you just found the community that was so comfortable and like you, even though the basketball community was. But they just, I think I remember the one thing you were saying, which was so cool, and I think you shared that with Johnny, is you said once you go to college, you get to choose who your friends are, and they choose.
They have to choose you,
and they
too.
have to choose you. That's what it was. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, because in high school, you're in a town, and if you're going to a public school,
you live here.
That is the people you are just essentially stuck with. Yes, you're stuck with people in college, but App State, 18,000 kids. If you don't get along with somebody, that's fine. There's plenty more people to go find and be friends with. So yeah, that was a big thing when I got to college and recognized that. I was like, oh, this is great. People have to choose to be friends with you instead of just being associated with you because of basketball or because of friend group in high school.
Yeah, it seems like a simple thing, but I think just that whole word that it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
That you get to do that. I think it's similar to your basketball, because you're playing basketball for your team, and like, okay, I might fit in as a point guard, and that's where I am on my team here because this is the 10 that are here based on where we live, because I'm at a public school. And then you go to an AAU team, and it's like, wow, okay, like this is cool. There's like all these different people. The thing we have in common is basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so maybe on this team I'm gonna play a 2 or 3 guard because they have 2 point guards on this team, and I'm going to do that. So that was kind of like a little bit of a taste of what it could be like in college, like you said, where you get to choose more. Yeah, I saw that as you did that. That was great, and that just made it so much more fun. Well, and the environment up there, you're just like, wow, I'm around so many more people that are liking what I'm liking. Don't you think? Like that was...
Yeah. It was definitely.
I don't even think there was that many people that had fly fished in high school.
Yeah, fly fishing was this just super niche thing that I feel like if someone else in high school did it, I knew them. And Shane's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
Shane and he eventually went to App, but him and I started hanging out so much when I found out he fly fished, and then we hit it off, and there's a couple other friends that we did that with, but when you finally get around more of a community that does those things, then it's like even more exciting, because you're like, oh, it's not anything about me. It's, because I did feel like I didn't fit in a lot of situations in high school, but it wasn't me. It was just I wasn't around the right group of people.
Right.
And then eventually I found that, and hopefully we'll continue to meet people out west. And but I found like a community in fly fishing too, which has been really cool. And the more I've gotten into it, the more people I've met, and they know these people, and they get it. They're in the same, they have the same thing.
Yeah. And I think your community, I remember you also saying, because you had your fraternity, and then you said it was so fun. I don't think I could have just done the fraternity. Like, that's so neat. Like you said, no, it was so nice to be able to do that, but then also have this other friend group that like we really understood each other in like a different way. Like, oh, I loved the fraternity, but we also had all these, friends outside, and you're still so good friends. In fact, one of them you're rooming with. That's, it just seems like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That you had that.
Yeah. Well, cool. This has been really fun. We're just over 3 hours. Yeah, we've been talking for over 3 hours, which is crazy. Okay. It just flew by.
This is me like catching the fish. Like, what? No wonder I was hungry. Right?
Yeah. But thanks for doing this.
This is amazing. I've been put in a position this weekend, like one from the surprise, which is crazy. And then going down and doing the brand new fishing, learning all about production side of it, getting time to spend time with you, to doing this, which is, again, completely new to me. And so, I am just like, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be not as much behind the scenes, but to be actually a part of it, and just for what you're doing,
Yeah.
Thank you
I've
much.
Loved every moment of it. It's been amazing. And, like I said, I'm excited to hopefully do more things like this in the future, which would be great. Oh, what did you think about your first podcast ever? Being on the first podcast?
That's a great question, because I was kind of nervous this morning knowing that we were going to do it. And at the very beginning, I just couldn't really figure out how, like like, ooh, do I have to say things like say him or what I'm saying, like you? Because, you know, like I said, I'm kind of used to public speaking. So you're speaking about something and you're not. But I'm going to say right now, first of all, I had no idea it was 3 hours because it was super fun because you made me think about things. I had to verbalize. Like when you had the question, I had to really dig down and go, wow, like how did I feel about that? But also just this platform, super fun. I had so much fun doing this.
Yeah, it's fun. Sometimes it takes a while to get into
No,
it.
it definitely. I think it definitely took a while, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, I love the podcast, and I'm excited to be doing it more often now as just another thing to connect. Like we might not ever have this conversation if we didn't pull the microphones up. So
that's
whether
true. 2
people hear it or 2,000 people, like I don't even care. It's
we had it.
Yeah.
It's really good. I think the other thing too, just like listening to, I didn't really listen to podcasts before. And so I think the more I've been listening, it's just so neat how you can just, I don't know, just that constant learning, not getting like stuck in a rut has been so neat. And I am not used to that platform, but I would say that's probably one of my more favorites of listening now. Because a lot of things I'm doing, obviously packing and things like that, I can't be watching a video. And sometimes I'll watch the podcast, but I mean, just the whole learning part of it and interaction. I think that's what it is. Like that's what's been so much fun here and our whole weekend. It's just interacting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, cheers. Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers.
Guys, thanks for listening. If you're still here after 3 hours, then bless your heart. And yeah, we've got a lot of cool things planned, I think, going forward. And I hope this was a cool way for you guys to learn a little bit more about what my mom does, how she's made an impact on me. And just, I feel like I learned, it was like talking to a therapist. I feel like I was like going back through my life like, oh, this is why I have this tendency, or this is why I do this.
Darn.
Dang it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We would really appreciate it if you guys are listening on any of the audio platforms. Leave us a little review, a little 5-star review. That would be awesome. Or like this if you're on YouTube. And yeah, well, hopefully you guys have a great rest of the year whenever this comes out. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks.